Meanwhile, heavy rain in the Little Karoo has caused widespread damage, but farming authorities have welcomed it, saying at last the 7-year drought in the region has been broken. Lupsha Kutsia is from Agri Western Cape.
You know, we came through a 7-year drought period, and as I've said last year, it's not one good year that cancelled 7 dry years, and we're so gladful and grateful for the fact that we're in for a second good year. But besides that, we know that all the dams are full, and the rivers running that strong means that we're going to have another 3 years of good expectations for good years in this area.
And finally, the UN Children's Agency UNICEF says 35 children have been killed in an attack on a village in Gezira State in central Sudan. More than 100 civilians are feared dead in Wednesday's attack, which has been blamed on the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The BBC's Anne Soy reports.
It's yet another grim reminder of how children in Sudan have paid the price for the brutal violence, said UNICEF's Executive Director Catherine Russell. She described the scenes in Wad al-Nura village as devastating. The village neighborhood group said RSF fighters struck on Wednesday with heavy artillery, killing at least 100 people. Some estimates put the death toll at about 200. The UN has called for an investigation into the attack. A pro-democracy lawyers group in the country called it a war crime.
Recapping the top story, the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced the party will seek to form a government of national unity with a broad group of opposition parties. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer news with the Orlando Pirates teenage hero Relebohile Mofokeng making a strong impression. He's earned his first international call-up. And we have tennis action. Iga Swiatek dominating Coco Gauff to reach the French Open final. All these sports stories and more just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning from the traffic desk. We report in on a collision on the N17 towards Joburg. This is coming through from Brakpan and the Springs areas just before the Osborne Road exit to Wadeville. The right lane closed and just one lane open. Likely it'll be down to one lane for some time this morning. Some protesting reported between Shellcross and Malvern, just south of Durban. If you drive through Burlington, you may find yourself being diverted, and probably a good idea to give yourself a bit of extra travel time around parts of the Eastern Cape coastline, with some rain in the forecast this morning for Rebecca and through East London as well. Take it easy on wet and slippery roads. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
6 minutes after 6, good morning, welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. How are you doing this morning? Well, a lot happening overnight, quite late last night. In fact, around, 10:30 or so, President Cyril Ramaphosa coming out, well, not really coming out, giving the closing address of the National Executive Committee meeting of the African National Congress, and saying he wants to, the political party, the NEC, has decided to try and seek to form a government of national unity. And already a little bit of reaction coming through. He said last night they'd already spoken to the DA, the EFF, the IFP, the National Freedom Party, and the Patriotic Alliance. It was quite a strange sort of set of circumstances around Umkhonto weSizwe. What seemed to happen was, earlier in the day, Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary-General of the ANC, said they'd try to get hold of MK. They've been told the only person who sort of makes decisions is former President Jacob Zuma. MK's told us that before. So no one could get hold of him. And so they hadn't really heard back from MK. And in fact, it seemed at one point they were sort of saying to the media, look, please, will you tell MK we want to speak to them. Then sort of a little later, quite late last night, really, the MK sort of released a statement or said publicly, look, we're actually willing to work with the ANC in this. So there's been some progress in that. Already, though, some other reaction. Julius Malema issuing a tweet last night saying, we can't share power with the enemy. Now, I don't know exactly who he's referring to there, whether he means the DA or the EFF or the ANC or someone else. But anyway, that's sort of where things stand at this stage. And I think the DA sort of saying, look, with conditions, and there'll be certain conditions. And all of this, puts certain places certain people in certain positions. Now the other opposition parties have to sort of make a decision. Who are we going to work with? Who will we not work with? The president saying that there's certain values, accountability, transparency. He wants written agreements. This is very important, by the way. All the experts we've spoken to about coalitions have made this point. You need a binding agreement, and everyone needs to know what it is. Everyone needs to be able to see that, this is what will happen, this is who will be responsible for that, these are the sort of principles, etc. So that's, I think, a positive thing. The other thing that he said, that this would apply to provinces as well, would have to be transparent in the provinces. And we kind of know. So we don't know at this stage what a government of national unity means for provinces. I mean, very difficult to know at this stage, still in the early phases. And then he also said that, this is the president, those who seek chaos or instability must be avoided. Now scratch your head. Who are you thinking of? Who would be that person who would cause chaos and instability? So, I mean, and it can go in lots of different directions. You might think, actually, the great disruptor is the Patriotic Alliance, or the great disruptor is, the demands of the DA, or the great disruptor is the sort of recent comments last week by former President Jacob Zuma. It's a very interesting and quite complicated situation. You know what I said to you at the beginning of this, and I'm still holding to it, I'm afraid. I know it's a bit boring. This is going to go back and forth and left and right several times, and we're still probably at least a week away from knowing exactly what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes all the way. You know how we like to leave things to the last minute. If we can win the game by a point, why do more than that? So I wouldn't be surprised if this goes all the way to the last minute, and that there's even a scrum penalty in there somewhere, somehow, towards the end of next week. So that's kind of how I see things at this stage. Just by the way, just a sort of comment, if I may, a sort of thought or a memory about a government of national unity. In the 1990s, when people talk about this period during the government of national unity, all the political parties, and particularly what was then called the New National Party, F.W. de Klerk was a deputy president at the time, Thabo Mbeki was the other, Nelson Mandela was president. There's a sort of footnote to it. Tony Leon's written about this many times. He says, during this time, the DA, what became the DA, it was called the DP at the time, the Democratic Party, wasn't really part of it. And in fact, Nelson Mandela approached him and said, would you join? Would you come into cabinet? We'll make you a cabinet minister. And he said no. He said the reason that he said no was that he did not want to be bound by a cabinet convention where he couldn't criticize the ANC, and he believed it was important to start the process of an opposition. In other words, the idea of having an opposition party. And I don't know if that still applies now, but it is something just worth considering. If you have everybody in government, what does that mean for actual politics? If you see what I mean, So I thought that was just something very interesting. And I think, I wonder how people sort of look back at Tony Leon and that comment. And of course, he's still around. He's still playing a big role in the DA, still part of their negotiating team with coalitions. Sort of long memory, and I'm sure he'll have a view on that now. Maybe he's one of the people we've been trying to get many voices to sort of, speak to about all of this. All of this then, so Julius Malema, it seems, says no, we can't share power with the enemy. But maybe that will change. The DA, some conditions. Let's see what happens. MK still at this stage, as I understand it, dispute the outcome of the election. So would they have to accept the outcome of the election before they could go into a government of national unity? And seriously, Cyril Ramaphosa and someone from MK in the same cabinet? Do? Stanza? Selma? Anyone see that? I don't know if I do, I must just tell you. All right. A couple of other interesting things happening. People have been going through the list of MPs, people who will actually be in Parliament, and people who won't. Patricia de Lille going back to Parliament. She'll be the only MP for the Good Party, and she's currently still a minister, at least until the inauguration. She's currently the Minister of Tourism. I wonder how she's going to feel about that. A couple of other stories that I think I should just mention very quickly. In Nelson Mandela Bay, the damage from the flooding there is now going to cost over R1 billion. 8 people lost their lives, as you know. A huge amount of water there. In the Western Cape, still major problems in the Western Cape too. I think more rain over the last little while, and that's very, very serious. So people talking about that. Business Day is a story this morning about the World Bank. The World Bank's compiled a list of ports, harbours, and how well they run. It's about 405 ports. Do you want to know who's at 405? Cape Town. Run so badly, that's where it is, at the bottom. Durban, don't get excited, you're at 398. So there's clearly a lot of work to do, and I know there's a lot of changes coming for our ports, and it looks like Pier 2, which is the big section of the Durban harbour, so the biggest section of the biggest harbour, if you like, is going to have that sort of private-public sort of partnership with the private company, etc. So that's happening. And then something I must just sort of mention to you, this is from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAPRA. Do you remember that story? It started in Nigeria about Benylin pediatric cough syrup. And I think it was Nigeria and Tanzania and one or two other countries who said they'd found some contaminants. And there was a bit of a recall here, and SAPRA went and investigated all of the Benylin pediatric syrup that had been sold here, and they found no problems, no contaminants, no adverse reactions. A little bit of good news there. You can sort of breathe a little easier if you do use the Benylin pediatric cough syrup. And by you use it, I mean your children use it, presumably. You don't drink the stuff, please. A little bit of good news there. They found no contaminants. It does seem all good with the Benylin pediatric cough syrup. Good to hear from you this morning, 086 000 2032. Do you believe in the GNU, the Government of National Unity? You SMS 41391. You tweet us FM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's 14 minutes after 6.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about FOMI, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely boss man. And she can earn up to 12.65% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app. Visit our website for more information. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credits provider. T's and C's apply.
Bafana, the AFCON 2023 bronze medalist takes on Zimbabwe Tuesday, the 11th of June 2024 at Free State Stadium at 6 p.m. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets are available for 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12. Scholars in uniform and students, student card required at Ticket Pro. Come dressed up to support Bafana to win prizes. If you're not in Mangaung, catch the game on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Well, isn't it getting more and more interesting and more complicated and more stuff happening later and later at night?
Stephen, yeah. Yeah, it was something. I'm a bit disappointed, however. I was expecting more. I don't know why, but I was expecting more.
I am not convinced this is done yet. Let me just say, I think there's a lot more to come.
Very true. Very true.
What's coming up today?
Well, following that announcement last night by the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa to form a government of national unity, and the various parties that come together must find common ground to serve South Africans and to improve the economy, the election outcome kind of creating a complex situation for the ANC. Analysis and reaction on the announcement by the ANC. The MK party has agreed to meet with the ANC, and the spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndlela saying that they will be meeting with the ANC soon and with an open mind. They've had engagements, nothing more, nothing else. And Action SA has withdrawn from the multi-party charter, saying certain parties in the MPC betrayed South Africans. We're looking into that. An update following the incident in which law enforcement agencies were deployed to Cape Town International Airport, as well as mopping up operations in the Cape Peninsula. That's following days of heavy rain. The President Cyril Ramaphosa is also today expected to visit the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape, where downpour has caused floods. We know over 3,000 people in the Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City were affected and displaced by that, and 10 people actually lost their lives. The area has been declared a disaster zone with the damage estimated at about 1 billion rand. Sibusiso Zita, the man accused of killing a celebrity chef Tembikile Litlape, is expected to make his second appearance at the Randburg Magistrates Court today, and he's facing a premeditated murder charge. In the Free State, 22-year-old Katleho Siape is set to appear in the Valcom Magistrates Court, where he will have a charge of murder added to the current charge of kidnapping. He has confessed to the killing of his 19-year-old girlfriend, that is Tato Tumahule, and DNA results have confirmed that the human remains found in a Valcom mine shaft were those of Tato. And just lastly, the Police Minister, Bheki Cele, together with the National Commissioner of the SAPS, General Fani Masimula, they expected to hand over in excess of about 130 vehicles to the Criminal Record Centre units that's responsible for linking suspects to crime scenes through evidence collection and analysis, and this basically to improve operations within the forensic investigations.
Isn't he the outgoing Minister of Police? I mean, he's not coming back to Parliament as far as I know. Shouldn't be nasty.
Yes, Stephen.
And Musa, no comment. Clearly, thank you. We'll be listening on the radio 19 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, let's have a look at your weather around the country. Tshwane, fine, a low of 6, a high of 18. Johannesburg, fine, 0 and 15. Vereeniging, fine, also freezing and 16. Bombela, fine, 10 and 24. Polokwane, fine, 7 and 19. Mahikeng, fine and windy, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 3 and 15. Vryburg, partly cloudy and windy, 1 and 15. Mangaung, morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy to cloudy, 2 and 14. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 3 and 15. Uppington, partly cloudy, 4 and 17. Cape Town, cloudy, isolated showers, becoming fine towards the end. Light and variable wind in the morning, 12 and 16. George, cloudy, isolated showers, becoming partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh westerly wind, 9 and 14. Gqeberha, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a moderate to fresh southwesterly wind, 10 and 17. East London, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a fresh to strong southwesterly, 13 and 17. eThekwini, fine, becoming cloudy in the morning, isolated afternoon showers and rain, a fresh to strong southwesterly wind, 14 and 21. Richards Bay, fine, becoming cloudy in the afternoon, isolated showers and rain, a fresh to strong southwesterly wind, 13 and 23. And Pietermaritzburg, fine, becoming cloudy in the afternoon, 7 and 17.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
The battle between the Super Eagles and Bafana Bafana is an ongoing grudge that will never end. They both believe their style of football is superior. The West clashes with Southern Africa. This is the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers. Catch Africa's great football rivalry, Nigeria versus South Africa, on Friday, 7 June at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes after 6. Well, in a week in which we're still awaiting to see the outcome of our coalition talks, and the votes of over 642 million people were counted in Indian elections. Now, in Europe, around 373 million people are voting for the next European Parliament. The European Parliament has certain powers over the budget for the EU. It's also a way to understand what forces are shaping Europe at the moment. Professor Anthony van Niekerk is a professor of international and diplomacy studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. Professor van Niekerk, good morning and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Stephen. Good morning.
This is a big election. Many people are eligible to vote. What trends are we likely to be able to see? What will it tell us about the political trends in Europe at the moment?
Yeah, no, indeed. As you point out, it's a significant event, and it's quite interesting. It's actually fascinating to think that all the people who live in the European Union, I see on its website it says 450 million. They vote. The 27 members vote for members of the European Parliament, MEPs. and 705 of them, and they sit in Brussels and in Strasbourg. They alternate, and they make laws and they hold the executive to account. They also choose the Commission, the executive of the European Union, and of course it's important then for them to determine political direction. And I think the political direction will come from the member states themselves. So what happens nationally in the 27 member states is reflected in the parliament itself and the political direction. And so to give an indication of where this thing is going, the Dutch were first out of the blocks to vote for their number of representatives in the European Parliament, which is determined proportionally. The bigger the country, the more the members. You know, Germany's got like 96 and Cyprus has got like 6. So the Dutch are first out of the block. Now we know in the Netherlands there's been a turn to the right with Geert Wilders. His political agenda is anti-immigrant, anti-Islam, quite nationalistic, anti-Putin, and probably pro-Israel. And I think the Dutch will elect a couple of representatives to go and represent that kind of political trend in the European Parliament. The same, I would argue, is happening in Germany, which is really a significant country. It's the economic driver of the EU. There's also been a turn to the right, despite the fact, Stephen, that they have a coalition. The coalition very quickly turned to the right. And if you think of the political agenda of the EU, their number one worry, threat, really, is Putin and the war in Ukraine. And by the way, the Dutch are not shy to fund, support, and provide F-16 fighter jets to Zelensky, which in the analysis of the Securocrats will make the war in Ukraine even more dangerous. An F-16 can fire missiles into Russia. So that is the biggest threat that they face. Putin and the way that they see him and Ukraine. And then the second one, of course, is what does the EU do with the Americans who in the NATO configuration, Trump might not support them the way that Biden does. And then thirdly, China for them is also a not an existential threat. It's a competitor, but they do worry about Chinese competition. In fact, they take China very serious. And in all of this, Stephen, you know, Africa really comes third or fourth. And Africa is not a positive story in this configuration. It is seen as a threat. Immigration, for example, endless conflicts, money spent on African development that is not going anywhere.
There's so much to all of this. So obviously, as you say, Ukraine, the issue, the situation there is a huge thing. Do political parties campaign in a slightly different way? And we've seen political parties that are opposed to the EU, nationalistic parties, actually going into the European Union Parliament deliberately to try and disrupt it. Nigel Farage, who eventually, was a key figure in the sort of Brexit movement in the UK, for example, did that. Does that still work as a strategy? Are we going to see that happen again? That sort of nationalistic trend in the EU Parliament?
I think very much. So just to explain that technical point, so political parties in member states vote for representatives, for these MEPs, members of the European Parliament. Once these people go to Brussels, they join like-minded political groups from other member states, and they form their own political parties, so to speak, or political groups. And the dominant one is sort of the center-left political grouping. But there are many of them, 6 or 7. Some to the far left and then some to the far right. And I think the trend that people are writing about is the growing influence of the far right. In fact, the far right contains Eurosceptics, those who go into the organization to undermine it from within. People even talk, the Dutch, for example, say, do we really need such a strong European Union, a commission and a parliament that determines policy directions in economic and trade deals on our behalf? Shouldn't we reduce the influence of this supranational organization? And so, yes, we might see a lot of trouble coming.
Professor, thank you so much. Professor Anthony van Niekerk, really appreciate the time. Professor of International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Nigeria tonight. Difficult trip for Bafana to get there. How's it looking?
Oh, we've got our lad, Relebohile Mofokeng. He's set to dazzle against Nigeria. He's earned his first international call-up, impressing Bafana head coach Hugo Bruges. Mofokeng, who scored a last-minute winner in the Nedbank Cup final against Mamelodi Sundowns, is praised for his humility and his respect for fellow players. Bafana is set to face Nigeria in the World Cup qualifier. 9 p.m. tonight is the kickoff. You can catch it live on SABC Sport. Bafana will then have a match against Zimbabwe in Bloemfontein. That's next Tuesday. Some soccer action. Egypt had a 2-1 victory over Burkina Faso in their World Cup Match Day 3 showdown. Took place in Cairo yesterday. Guinea-Bissau, they were surprisingly held to a 0-0 draw at home by Ethiopia and will now prepare to host Egypt. That's on Monday. Cricket. The United States beat Pakistan in the T20 World Cup after their Group A match went to a thrilling super over finish in Dallas yesterday. Both teams made 159 in their regulation 20 overs, with the non-test nation, the United States, then setting Pakistan 19 to win in the super over. Pakistan, runners-up at the 2022 T20 World Cup and champions in 2009, only managed 13 for 1 in reply. The other match saw captain Richie Berrington and Michael Lees guiding Scotland to a 5-wicket victory over Namibia in what is a pivotal T20 match, a Group B game that took place in Bridgetown. Earlier, having had the better of Tuesday's washout with England, Scotland held Namibia for 155 for 9. Captain Gerard Erasmus top scoring with 52 from 31 balls. Now, victory against Oman in Antigua on Sunday could put Scotland in a strong position to qualify from a stellar group that includes England as well as Australia. Cycling news. A huge crash with more than 30 cyclists involved has seen the stage 5 of the Criterium du Dauphiné neutralised under very wet conditions with 21 kilometres to end the stage. A group of cyclists crashed, the peloton arriving to the finish line with no time or points added into the standings. Remco Evenepoel continuing his lead in the general standings. And finally, tennis action. Iga Swiatek continuing her dominance over Coco Gauff to reach the French Open final and move closer to a third straight title at Roland Garros. The world number 1 Swiatek will face the Italian 12 seed Jasmine Paolini. Paolini beats the 17-year-old Russian Mira Andreeva 6-3, 6-1. Here's Paolini.
I'm, really happy, really happy, and yeah, it's a great feeling to be in a Grand Slam final. I don't know, seems something impossible, but it's true. So I'm really happy to be in this position. Yeah.
For Sport on Sunrise, top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll find out a little bit more about last night's announcement by the leader of the ANC, President Cyril Ramaphosa, about the government of a national unity, with SFM leading the conversation 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC has laid down stringent conditions under which parties will be included in the government of national unity. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that the party will seek to form the government of national unity with a broad group of opposition parties. The airports company South Africa says it will provide an update today following an incident in which law enforcement agencies were deployed to Cape Town International Airport yesterday evening. And about 16 families have been evacuated from flood-affected structures to a local sports centre hall in Citrusdal in the Western Cape following heavy downpour. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There is a crash on Joburg's N17. It is driving through to Joburg, so coming out of Ekurhuleni, just around Osborne Road in the Wadeville area. If you're driving in from Brakpan or Boksburg, there is some queuing pressure as you dip into a single lane. The N1 looking okay between Pretoria and Joburg. The Mopani Highway XX looks a bit slow for motorists coming out of Shoshenguve. The R80 starting to backlog. Yesterday we saw an additional lane closure go in on the R21 at the roadworks at Clayville, and for motorists that were travelling off peak, caught in about a plus 30-minute delay. So just keep that in mind. If you're going from Pretoria down to the airport, use the R21 during the sort of off-peak part of the day. You might be thinking it's a lot easier, you get through okay, and then all of a sudden you hit a 35-minute wall of traffic. So just keep that in mind. The R21 towards the airport, worth putting an extra 40 minutes on your journey. If you arrive safe, great. If you arrive late and miss your flight, that's a whole different story. Pietermaritzburg to Durban looks fine. Of course, it's Comrades this weekend. Don't forget about the closures that will be in place, all the usual routes, but it's the uprun, so the closures in the early part of the day at Durban, extending into the late afternoon, early evening on the Pietermaritzburg side. And Cape Town, it's a lot easier run through the traffic this morning. Weather's a lot better, busy, but no major obstructions, and still some wet weather conditions around coastal parts of the Eastern Cape region. Please drive carefully if it's wet where you are. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Parliamentary, good morning. How are you doing?
Happy Friday, Stephen. I'm well, thanks, and I hope you're good.
What is it with you business people? And happy Friday. How are the markets this morning?
Well, let's take a look at how markets closed off yesterday. Pretty mixed in the U.S. Traders on that end, playing it cool ahead of the U.S. non-farm payrolls report for May, which will give us clues on how the labor market has been performing. In Asia, stocks also mixed, following cues from Wall Street overnight as the rate cut announcements by the European Central Bank and the Bank of Canada raised expectations for an interest rate cut by the U.S. Fed in September, which could then stimulate economic activity. Back at home, the JSE making somewhat of a comeback after a muted finish on Wednesday. The all-share managed to end 0.38% higher yesterday, while the rand remains range-bound between 18.90 and 18.99. Many are saying that we will probably see it get stronger when political concerns in the country subside. It's currently sitting at 18.93 against the greenback.
And the European Central Bank, it cut rates for the first time in 5 years.
That's right, Stephen. Now, the European Central Bank cut rates by 25 basis points to 3.75%. This move was widely expected as it managed to tame inflation in the region. This is the first cut since 2019, and many traders see this move as the beginning of the global easing cycle. The ECB joins central banks from Canada, Sweden, and Switzerland as it starts to unwind some of the steepest rate hikes used to tame a post-pandemic inflation surge. Now, despite this move, traders are somewhat concerned, calling it a hawkish cut as policymakers raise their 2025 inflation projection to 2.2% from 2.0%. Now, showing that risks still remain to the upside when it comes to inflation. The ECB said it will continue to follow a data-dependent and meeting-by-meeting approach to determining the appropriate level and duration of restriction. This approach saw traders push back their rate cut expectations, with some saying we will see up to 3 cuts from the ECB this year. Now, this is a big change from the start of the year when we had more than 5 cuts anticipated.
And then the diamond industry continuing to struggle.
It really is. The demand for diamonds continues to dwindle. This year, we've seen prices decline 5.7% and fall over 30% from its all-time high in 2022. Now, analysts are pointing to the falling demand in China, a key market for diamonds, and falling marriage rates as well as growing popularity for gold and lab-grown gems all drove down Chinese demand for diamonds. Now, the end of the pandemic restrictions also saw consumers channeling their spending toward travel experiences instead of diamond products, further hurting that market more. The outlook for the industry seems quite bleak. In a CNBC interview, Ankur Daga, founder and CEO of fine jewelry e-commerce company Angara, said that the industry is in trouble and he believes natural diamond prices could fall another 15 to 20% over the next 12 months. These are some of the issues just weighing on De Beers, and it'll be interesting to see how Anglo goes about selling that unit in these conditions.
Parliamentary, thank you very much indeed. Back, of course, in an hour, more business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Arrest Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Stephen, fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
3 American citizens are among the 53 people who appear in a military court today in the DRC after that foiled coup attempt.
Stephen, this is a message that came from the Gombe Garrison Military Court from the Major General Patrick Muyembe, who said that the men will face charges of terrorism, illegal possession of weapons and arms of war, attempted assassination, criminal association, murder, and financing of terrorism. Remember, Stephen, Christian Malanga was killed in this attempted coup that happened last month in the DRC. So these 53 men will appear before the courts. What is strange, Stephen, is that Felix Tshisekedi has not spoken even a word about this attempted coup. Others are saying have left the matters to the military to deal with it. We have 3 Americans who were involved, Stephen, with the pretext that others they were tourists, investors, but it appears also that even the Human Rights Watch is closely looking at this case, urging the government of DRC to accord this accused a fair and a transparent trial. We'll still observe it, Stephen, to see what will happen in this attempted coup that happened in the DRC in Kinshasa, both in the palace of Tshisekedi as well as Vital Kamerhe.
And then in Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces, one side in that civil war, killed 100 people in an attack on a village.
Stephen, Gazari province is one of the villages that has been attacked by the Rapid Support Force in the North Sudan. Still worrying when you look at the numbers that the Madani Resistance Committee have been saying that the paramilitary is attempting to loot some of the areas, but came this week, there was this attack that happened that killed more than 100 people, including women and children and elderly people. This is worrying, Stephen, because the AU, the IGAD, the international community has been failing the Sudan. When you look at that, almost 14,000 people have been killed and thousands have been wounded since this war started in April 2023. So it's showing that the war is moving from Khartoum to the western part of Sudan.
And then in Namibia, they've opened voter registration.
Stephen, Namibia decides, remember, in November 27, now they've opened the registration period for the Presidential and National Assembly until the 1st of August. First day, the Namibian Electoral Commission said they've recorded 25,000 people who have registered. And for the first time, Stephen, I think we'll have 3 female candidates. The current Deputy President, Netumbo Nandi, will be contesting. Alingula, a former Accountant General of Namibia, will also contest, as well as a career gender activist, Rosa Namisis, will also contest. So we'll closely look at Namibia, Stephen, when it decides towards the end of this year in 2024 in November in Windhoek.
And then the situation in Mozambique, their president believes that South Korea is open about sharing its development experience.
Philip Jacinto Nyusi is in South Korea, Stephen. Remember the Africa-Korea summit, and he engaged with his counterpart, Yoon Suk Yeol, where they had a cordial meeting. And now he says that Mozambique can benefit out of South Korea on issues of education, health, agriculture. And he said that this meeting, it is important considering that both Mozambique and Korea, they've been growing in terms of their exports and import. Now he looks at Korea now, Philip Jacinto Nyusi, as we know that he's going to be leaving the office soon in October. But it appears that this Korea-Africa summit have bring some low-hanging fruits for the SADC region, Stephen, with Philip Jacinto Nyusi, as I said, sharing the experience with South Korea.
And then you're taking us all the way back to the 7th of June, 1953.
71 years ago, Stephen, will never forget him. He passed away actually on the 16th of July 2019, but he was born today. He will have been 71 years. We're talking about Johnny Clegg, who was born in England to an English father and a Zimbabwean mother. He left England, Stephen, for Zimbabwe, where he lived until the age of 7, and he immigrated to South Africa when her marriage to a South African journalist. We remember Johnny Clegg and Sipho Mchunu with that band Juluka. That's part of what it narrates our 30 years of our struggle in this country. In 2011, he celebrated 30 years in the music industry with a world tour. Asante Sana SG, as we're still in a conversation, SAFM observing the Soweto Uprising Month.
Thank you very much indeed, Ross Advocate Sipho Mantula. Do appreciate the time, and of course, he'll be back with us on Monday, 19 minutes now to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, so much going on this morning. Of course, questions around a government of national unity, the implications of all of that. Maxwell in Tshwane, hi, good morning. How do you feel about the idea?
Good morning, Stephen Grootes. I feel good about the idea, but it seems as this morning there are those who are not feeling good about the idea. And if there are some certain people like the EFF have already tweeted, Stephen, let them left behind, because you can see the people who want the anarchy in this country. And to those who want an excluding of DA in this process, can they give me the reason why DA must not be the part of us in this country? That means white people must go to the sea. When they say ESS, ANC and the MK only as black parties, what kind of narrative are they giving us? Because the same ESS, MK and ANC, they don't see eye to eye, Stephen Grootes. The only best unity that we can have is to include everybody who wants to be included in this kind of situation that the ANC come with, other than what were happening. My last point is the Gaza situation, Stephen Grootes, where many people are being killed each and every day compared to the Russian and Ukraine war. What is your take about that situation? And thanks for taking my call. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Maxwell. I don't know your surname, so I'll just call you Maxwell. But thank you. Look, I mean, every conflict has its own features. Is all I'm going to say. And I mean, you know, I think that the situation in Gaza just simply cannot go on. I don't know why you asked me to compare the two. I don't know if you can compare the two. They're very different.
They're absolutely different. It's when most people are focusing on Ukraine, Russia, other than what happened even yesterday. 35 people were killed. Most of those ones are children. Now, USA are telling us that they give us the name Israel, as you are saying that we were targeting Hamas. Give us one name that is a Hamas leader that was killed there. It will never happen, Stephen. Everybody's fielding their hands. They don't want to help the people in Palestine. It's so very sad what is happening in that part of the world.
No, absolutely, Maxwell. I couldn't agree more on the line from Tswana. And this is also why our government has done what it's done at the International Court of Justice. Taba in KwaZulu-Natal. Taba, coalitions, hi.
Yes, I want to support DA and ANC to work together.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because if we want to look the country to look forward, we must work together, ANC and DA. If the MK and other parties like EFF, that means that that country is still going back.
Oh, the line's dropped there, Tub. I'm not sure why that happened. Sorry, you were saying the country was going back. We'll try and get hold of you again. Sorry about that. 6:45.
The National Pulse on SAFM.
Anybody can make allegations about anybody. And if you step aside or resign merely because of allegations, that can be manipulated simply to get people out of position.
No. Of course, I hear you. That's why, as an employer, you can't just fire all your employees. You need to go through a process. And part of that process is, for example, a disciplinary hearing. Because in terms of disciplinaries, normally, there's some policies and stuff that certain actions may contravene certain policies. So what I'm advocating for is a trial, a criminal trial. The state has to show beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty of an offence. But sometimes people's actions may not be a crime, but they have contravened policies.
Advocate Stephanie Fick, Outer Executive Director for Accountability and Public Governance.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
14 minutes to 7. Good morning. The National Energy Regulator, NERSA, says it's now investigating whether it can ask councils to provide more free basic electricity to people who cannot pay for it. At the moment, households that cannot pay gets what's called 50 kilowatt hours for free a month. It's funded by the National Treasury through a grant to councils. Brian Sachotlo is the head of electricity pricing and tariffs at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
So people get a certain amount of electricity for free every month. How big a change do you want to make?
Stephen, let me first explain that the 50 kilowatt hours is determined by the Department of Minerals and Energy Resources. What we do as NERSA, we determine the rate. However, we've received some comments during our public consultation processes that we normally embark on, and people have highlighted that the 50 kilowatt hours may not be sufficient for them. All that we as NERSA, we cannot investigate or determine or increase that 50 kilowatt hours, but we bring it to the attention of the department with the comments as received from the customers to say this is what the customers are saying. It will then be up to the department to do that investigation and for the department to then determine the allowable amount of electricity to be given to customers.
So you can't even make a recommendation?
We can only highlight to them. Remember, the mandate for policy making is really with the department. But we can advise if ever we've got facts and evidence. We can advise, but ultimate decision can only be made by the department.
I would imagine that 50 kilowatt hours a month. I mean, maybe you can use a light, but you would never boil a kettle, and you probably wouldn't get a geyser.
You can, but obviously the rate at which your consumption will increase will be much higher when you use a kettle or use a geyser. Normally, these obviously for the sake that it is for indigents. Most of the time, you'll find that these people do not own the geysers. They probably have a kettle, they have a radio, they have a light, but the geysers normally would not be there, and that is why even in the building of the new RDP houses, you'll find that there's free panels, the water heating panels that they put on the rooftops to assist them with that in the space of the geyser.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's government that funds this, right? It comes from the National Treasury. So in the end, it goes back to government. Is that right?
Yes, it is. It is funded by the National Treasury. And the reason that we are doing this rate for the reinvestment of ESCOM by municipalities, it is because the money is allocated to municipalities. But there are areas within the municipality where the ESCOM is the supplier or the licensed distributor. So once ESCOM has supplied these customers within that municipality, the municipality uses the money received from the National Treasury to reinvest ESCOM for the electricity energy that is being supplied to those customers.
Brian, thank you. Very clear explanation. Brian Sachotlo is the head of electricity pricing and tariffs at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. 11 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Quite a backlog coming in from the Boksburg, Brakpan and Springs area this morning on your way to Joburg. A fatal pedestrian collision before the Osborne Road exit at Wadeville. Average speeds about 9 kilometres an hour. Trip time plus 20 minutes and extended to grow as well in terms of the delays that you face. Everyone just filtering into a single lane and probably will be for some time. Cedar Road down to Vickop and Slow. Still some traffic light issues plaguing that run in from Danefern towards Four Ways. The Mopani Highway to Pretoria queuing up this morning at Block XX area. About a 10-minute wait to get through there. Just south of Durban, Chatsworth, Higginson Highway. That's busy at the Chats Glen area. And if you're driving to Durban a little bit later this morning on the M4, expect to encounter some problems. The top end of the M4, Southern Freeway, where it becomes Brook Street, is closed until the 21st of this month for some works that need to be done there. And what happens is motorists that come up and miss the Esplanade off-ramp and want to go deeper into the CBD have to end up sort of going along a couple of alternative routes, take you into the sort of market area and then back on Dr. Pixley Kasemi into the CBD. So it all does get very busy, but that comes a little bit later once we've got bigger volumes in the mix. Cape Town, a lot better morning for travel today. Volumes lighter than we've had earlier in the week, and conditions a lot better as well. There is a crash involving a motorcyclist, Frans Conradi, before Old Oak Road. If you're coming from Brackenfell into Belleville, expect some queues there. And Bosman's Dam Road, you can't beat the backlogs on that road, even on a gentle Friday. It's already queuing from Edgemead through towards Summer Greens and Montague Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
9 minutes to 7 the time. Good morning. So last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa giving his closing address to the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting. It was in public. He said the ANC had decided it would like to form a government of national unity. He confirmed the party had already started talking to the Democratic Alliance, the EFF, the IFP and the Patriotic Alliance. At one point during the day yesterday, Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, seemed to say they had not been able to contact Umkhonto weSizwe. But then last night, MK said in public they had been in contact and would be in contact with the ANC about a possible coalition discussion. Quite late last night, maybe even early this morning, Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, tweeted that he would not, and he tweeted, "We can't share power with the enemy." That appeared to be in response to President Ramaphosa's comment. Well, let's get an assessment from the political editor here at the SABC, Mzwandile Mbeja. Mzwai, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning to the listener.
How would you assess what the president said last night? What does the ANC actually want to do?
Well, Steve, I think the ANC was in a very difficult situation, really. Had it gone with the DA in terms of the coalition, there was so much pushback. Had it gone with the EFF and possibly IFP and, let's say, even MK, also you had people who were very, very opposed to that. And I think given that it realized that whichever way it took, so there was going to be some sort of a pushback. And I think it cleverly sat down and said, you know what, let's just get out of the situation by inviting everyone. I think that's why they ended up deciding to then go for the government of national unity. And you know what this does, Steve? It basically then puts it out there to South Africans to say, well, the ANC recognizes that it didn't achieve the 50% plus, but it is gracious enough to say, South Africans, come, let's talk. So whoever decides to walk away, then it's up to them. But insofar as it is concerned, so it will be seen as an adult in the room.
So it almost reverses the pressure. The ANC was under pressure to make a decision, left or right, really. Now suddenly it puts all of those parties under pressure. Do you join us or do you not?
Absolutely. As I've said, the ANC now appears like an adult in the room. So if you then decide you are not coming to be part of this government of national unity, the question is why. And already you've alluded to the statement or to the Twitter of Julius Malema. Even in the press conference at the Rock, he basically made it clear, said, you know what, we're not the Mandelas, so we don't want the government of national unity, one coalition. But at the same time, the DA, Steve, has been very clear to say they can't work with the EFF. EFF is public enemy number one. For me, right now, it's going to be interesting to see what the EFF and the DA is going to be doing based on this. So we know that the EFF is meeting this weekend to obviously discuss amongst this issue. It will really be interesting to hear the outcome. And same thing with the DA. So they've been waiting for this, and then let's see. Does one walk out because the other walks in? It's a very interesting situation.
Well, they both walk out. The president saying last night, as I understand the reports, he said those who seek chaos or instability must be avoided. Hey, who do you think he was talking about?
Without naming names, I think he's been probably side-eyeing, so to speak, the MK, given what they have been saying. Part of the principles they've been stressing was that so they want people who believe in the constitutionality, people who believe in certain basic values. And one of the stated intentions of the Umkhonto is that they want this. They feel this constitution should be scrapped. Quite a number of things need to be changed. So I think those are some of the things that really are informing this. So they will have to be a minimum common understanding in terms of how to constitute this government of national unity. But I think, as you and I have been saying, I think the ANC was very clever in coming up with this to really avoid taking pressure off it completely.
Umkhonto Sizwe, as I understand it, still disputes the outcome of the election. We're due to speak to them in about half an hour, and we'll ask them if that's the case, and they'll speak for themselves. But if they continue to dispute the outcome of the election, can they really join a government of national unity?
Well, the fact that they've started speaking to the ANC, albeit informally, so does indicate that I think Umkhonto Sizwe realized that the train is now moving. So you decide, are you getting on or you somehow want to influence certain things? I personally don't see them join the government of national unity. Because it may feel, from what they stand for, like a betrayal, because they'll be working with people who they've said they simply cannot work with.
Mzwandile Mbeje, thank you. Politics editor here at the SABC. I think there are going to be so many conversations around this. Are you with SAFM? 4 minutes now to 7. Peter on the line from Soweto. It says you're a Sowetan. I don't know if you're in Soweto or you just live there. Good morning. How do you feel?
Peter, how are you, Steve?
I'm well, Peter. Go for it.
I'm into it. Steve, I don't support this idea of government national unity. We don't need that thing. We need it in 1994, because we are some things that we are avoiding, strong reason, one of them being a civil war that was looming back then, of which it worked very well. For now, if we need that thing, the government national unity, for what reason? Because there's no threat on wars. And people don't understand what coalition means. In a coalition government, we need to have opposition, a strong opposition. So if we invite everyone in parliament, and then who's going to take the seat of opposition? It means the word opposition. So what we need is a coalition, so that we have an opposition, a strong opposition that will keep the coalition government in account. So this thing of government national unity by the president, I think is going like having a business affairs in government. So you're going to run the government as business. So it means you're compromising with the left of South African, which is not good, and that thing will cause a serious problem.
Yeah. All right, Peter in Soweto, thank you. Intente in Inanda. Intente, I presume Inanda, KwaZulu-Natal, rather than Inanda, the posh area of Joburg. Good morning.
Yes, Steve, how are you?
I'm well. Go for it. Coalitions?
I'm okay. Yes, coalition. Yes. I'm just wondering whether this coalition is going to work, because I just come across something which is a cut and paste of our election. The poll, which is a cut and paste of what we see as our election results. Now, I don't know. That's a problem with these results. And I don't know whether we should go on.
What is the problem, Intente?
And before the MK came in, there was a poll in February.
Yeah.
It said 62% for NCDA, 60% before MK came in, and then 30% for the four EFF, IFP, PNSA, FF plus.
Yeah.
30%, and then the rest, which is 8, is for the smaller parties. Exactly, that's what happened. But then MK had to be inserted amongst the 30%. That's the problem. It's exactly what happened. But this thing was known before the election. I don't know whether that's
so you're saying the poll was correct, and it was 3 months before the election.
Yes, in fact, in March.
Yeah.
In March, in October last year. October last year.
Yes, I think I know which poll you're talking about. Look, Intente, I mean,
but exactly, Steve. Mathematical modeling. That's what the HSRC were telling us about mathematical modeling. We know mathematical modeling.
Yes.
The inserting of MK amongst the 30% and not touching ANC DA percentage is a rigging of all sorts.
I don't think it's rigging, Intente. I think it's just one of those things that happens. I mean, you still need to go and look through the electoral process and check there, and political parties have had the chance to object. But
can MK coming in there not affect DA and NC there at the top with the 62%? Now feeding with the 30% of the FF and IFP and SNS and FF plus.
It is surprising, Intente. I must just say, and I'm afraid we're running out of time, and I must just say that what I haven't seen yet is an analysis of voting district by voting district, so we can work out where votes moved. So from which party to which party, from ANC to MK or IP, whatever it is. So, Intente, I'm afraid I do have to leave it there, but I hear you. In the next half hour, we hear from Trevor Manuel, due to hear from Mkhonto Wesizwe as well. You with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, ANC's conditions for Government of National Unity and Western Cape farmers' reaction on the heavy rainfall. Good morning. The ANC has laid down stringent conditions under which parties will be included in the Government of National Unity. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced the party will seek to form the Government of National Unity with a broad group of opposition parties. He briefed the media in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, on the outcomes of a special ANC National Executive Committee meeting on coalition talks. Ramaphosa explains the conditions under which parties will be included in the pact.
All parties must commit to shared values, nation building and social cohesion. These values include respect for the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the rule of law, social justice and equity, human dignity, non-racialism and non-sexism. These values also include stability, accountability, transparency, integrity, community participation and good governance. Agreements between parties who will be involved in this whole process should be in writing. They should be public and include measures for holding all participants accountable.
Both the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party and the ANC have confirmed they will be meeting soon. The MK Party is a splinter party whose leader is the former ANC President Jacob Zuma. The MK Party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndlela says they will keep an open mind during their meeting with the ANC.
The reality is the following. We've never received a formal invite or in the form of a letter that says we want to have discussions and engage in coalition talks with yourselves. That has not happened yet. No, engagements do not necessarily mean a meeting where we sit across the table with them. Engagements mean exactly what I'm referring to. These are overtures. These are just engagements where, they've called us, they've called certain leaders of our party to get a sense as to what the climate is to engage in discussions. And that's just been that.
A passenger on flight FA102 from the Cape Town International Airport says they were not informed about a possible security threat until they were airborne. Law enforcement agencies were deployed to the airport yesterday evening after the crew of the departing flight was alerted to the possible threat. The airport's company South Africa says it will provide an update today. This passenger, Tony Hafane, says they were initially informed about operational problems.
What happened is that we actually got onto the flight at around 30 minutes before departure. And while we were on the flight, we were told that there was an operational issue that needed to be taken care of and a few security checks by the pilot and the flight crew. When we got into the other plane, that's when we saw it on the news. We basically saw tweets from airports company South Africa saying that there was a bomb scare.
The N12 between Oudtshoorn and Rust in the Little Karoo has been reopened. The road was closed on Monday evening following flooding in the area. The Western Cape traffic authorities have advised motorists to drive with caution. However, the Meringsport Pass is still closed. The alternative route to and from the Central Karoo is the N9 via Willowmore. Meanwhile, about 16 families have been evacuated from flood-affected structures to a local sports centre hall in Citrusdal. These affected people explain what they have been through.
We heard someone calling for us to get up and get away. The water is coming. We slept at the police station and then we were brought here. There is food and it's dry. I had a feeling something might happen, so I came home and warned people the river might burst its banks. I was in time.
Meanwhile, heavy rain in the Little Karoo has caused widespread damage, but farming authorities have welcomed it, saying at last the 7-year drought in the region has been broken. Lupsha Kutsia is from Agri Western Cape.
We came through a 7-year drought period, and as I've said last year, it's not one good year that cancels 7 dry years, and we're so gladful and grateful for the fact that we're in for a second good year. But besides that, we know that all the dams are full, and the river's running that strong means that we're going to have another 3 years of good expectations for good years in this area.
Didn't quite catch that. Recapping the top story, the ANC has laid down stringent conditions under which parties will be included in the government of national unity. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced the party will seek to form the government of national unity with a broad group of opposition parties. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. The Bafana coach Hugo Broos is urging his team to be bullish against Nigeria, aiming for 4 points from the Super Eagles and Zimbabwe. And cricket, the Protea star Heinrich Klaasen saying the New York pitch could level the field in the Proteas T20 World Cup clash against the Netherlands. Let's find out more just before 7:30.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just confirming the hold-ups out of Soshanguve towards Pretoria on the R80. The Mopani Highway is a crash in at XX. It's a heavy backlog leaving Shosso this morning. Also very heavy on the N17 coming in from Brakpan and Springs towards Joburg. Crash before Osborne Road at Wadeville. One lane open. That crash likely to be there for some time. Big queues parking back through Rondebolt Road now. About a 20-minute minimum to get through there. Also crash on the N3 North at Galuli. So traffic coming out of Alberton and Germiston up through the cement factory in Bedfordview. In for another slow go run this morning. Durban's Higginson Highway leaving Chatsworth. Some delays there in the Chats Glen area. And Cape Town, the N7 North, that's starting to backlog through towards the busy Bosmansdam Road. Bosmansdam Road's quite heavy this morning as you come out of Edgemead all the way through to Bosmans, all the way through to Montague Drive in the Summer Greens area. Also just worth a note, the Valhalla Owen Road junction not working. If you come off Robert Sobukwe and go up into Epping, there's quite a backlog northbound on Valhalla Drive into that faulty junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. In a moment, Trevor Manuel. The view of someone who's played an important role in our society over many years on the coalition talks, the situation, the suggestions of a government of national unity. Also, Mkhonto Sizwe, we'll hear from their spokesperson in Tlamulo and Tlela about their reaction to it. Also, about what talks there are between themselves and the ANC. Don't forget, by the way, from 8:30, your story of the week. I imagine it might be about the coalitions, your reaction as well to the issue around a government of national unity. You might want to book your spot on 086 000 2032 and just get yourself ready for that. So a lot to come this morning. And also a little later from around 8 o'clock, we'll speak to the Secretary to Parliament, Kulila George. Conversations with him around some of the technicalities of electing a new president. They could become important. Good morning, it's 9 after 7.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
So important developments around coalition negotiations and discussions and arrangements overnight. President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that the ANC National Executive Committee has decided to try and form a government of national unity. He says his party has already been talking to the DA, the IFP, the EFF, the National Freedom Party and the Patriotic Alliance. It does appear now that MK is also talking to the ANC. We'll hear from them in a few moments. Julius Malema said last night on Twitter, I'll quote, "We can't share power with the enemy," end quote. That seemed to be his response to the suggestion. Ramaphosa also saying that those who seek chaos and instability should be avoided. So then, is a government of national unity really possible? Is this really the same as 1994, or is it very, very different? Trevor Manuel was an anti-apartheid activist, a finance minister, a national planning minister, and is now chair of Old Mutual. Mr. Manuel, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to your listeners. You should put in there that I was also in the cabinet of that government of national unity, to the extent it matters.
I knew that I must have left something out. From what you see politically in our society at present, and I know you'll have watched the election campaigns, you'll have watched everything that's happened afterwards, do you think a government of national unity is possible? Is it feasible? Is it the best plan for the moment?
I think that we mustn't settle on a government of national unity as a broad theme because we're afraid to tackle the construction of a coalition. The objective of the entire exercise has to be what happens to the lives of our people. The guy who led the revolution in Guinea-Bissau, Amilcar Cabral, said, always bear in mind that people are not fighting for ideas, for the things in anyone's head. They're fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. I think that kind of inflection point is introduced by the election results. There has to be a very significant change, and I don't think, Stephen, that you can compare the present to 1994. Firstly, the Government of National Unity in 1994 was legislated in the interim constitution. It required a Government of National Unity to be in power until the final constitution was drafted. And so happened that when the final constitution was adopted in May of 1996, the new National Party, as it then were, decided to step out. The ANC then invited the IFP to remain as part of that government of national unity. But bear in mind that the ANC in 1994 had virtually 63% voter support, not 40%. So to deal with the government of national unity was actually an act of magnanimity on the one hand, and on the other hand, a requirement of the interim constitution. 40% doesn't give you the same kind of authority, and that's what's important about the president.
In other words, I mean, the ANC might be in a government of national unity. It just wouldn't have the same power or influence that it did back then. As you say, 40% is not 63%.
Well, that's the first part of it. The other part of it is, what do parties come in on? And there are various options. One option is obviously a very broad coalition that needs to be constructed. And then within that coalition, certain parties would need to may have to take executive seats. Which would those be and on what basis? The other alternative one frequently spoken about these days is the so-called confidence and supply deal, where opposition parties don't disrupt the work of government, such as budget and important legislation, but that requires a very significant change. It requires negotiating a budget, for instance, with parties with whom you fundamentally disagree. It means that you need to construct a set of bottom lines within that negotiation, and it requires a very different level of political maturity. I don't know that in the current setup, a confidence and supply deal is likely to happen, which then leaves us with a coalition of sorts. And the question is who and on what basis that happens, because I'm saying that the message that we're not hearing is that the people matter, but repeatedly. It's about the people, it's about the quality of their lives, it's about messaging that on a continuous basis, and it also may require discussion between national and provincial governments so that you don't have a complete collapse between what provinces do and what you're trying to do at national government.
It would seem to me that one of the perhaps the most important aim of a government over the longer term is to grow the economy and create jobs. I mean, the two should run together. They don't always. So create jobs, right? Particularly for young people. If we had a government of national unity or a government of coalition partners with different aims, would the risk be that everyone spends their time fighting over economic policy and nothing is actually done? To improve our situation, it seems to me, we need a sustained, national, united kind of effort, a big intervention. And I don't know if that could happen in any kind of government of national unity or even any kind of coalition, because economic policy is obviously contested in our politics.
Yes, but just step back from that to what President Ramaphosa said last night. Acceptance of the constitutional values cannot be a basis for a government of national unity, because every member of parliament will be sworn in by the Chief Justice over the next few weeks, depending on when this is possible, would pledge allegiance to the Constitution and all laws of the country. It's not an optional extra. It's the very basis on which you become a member of parliament. So when people don't act in the spirit of the Constitution, they've violated their own oath. You've got to attach penalties to behavior when people don't accept their own oath of office. The other issue is trust. When people, you hear politicians talk about sworn enemies, sworn class enemies, and so on and so on. If you don't have a basis for trust, you don't have a basis for anything, because then you've forgotten about the people. Ultimately, the objective is the quality of life of the people. The Constitution is abundantly clear on that. Go look at the preamble to the Constitution, look at the Bill of Rights again, and confirm that is what defines us as a nation state. Then look at the election results, and the electorate gave all parties a very clear message, and that message must now be understood. And you can't put the lives of people on hold. The lives of people must be advanced, and so I think what we need to hear from the governing party is what the terms of that government of national unity would be, who's in and who's out, on what basis parties come in. It's not 1994 where matters were predetermined into the Constitution.
Do you worry that actually there may be no clarity for quite some time, that they may not be able to reach an agreement? We don't know what Umkhonto we Sizwe might do, or the DA might do, or the EFF might do. We don't know how it's going to play out. And in fact, we could get to a position where we don't have a government in a week's time.
That is a possibility, and could in fact be a profound tragedy, because what needs to happen in terms of our Constitution is that the current government remains in power until a new president and consequently a new cabinet would be sworn in. You've got to get through this first phase. So the key issue is what happens next week, Friday, when when MPs are meant to arrive, take the oath of office, become members of Parliament, and then decide on the first key decisions, the election of the President, the election of the Speaker, and then the organization of the legislative authority. These are big issues, and the longer you defer that, the greater the impact on the lives of people. One other issue that's important in this regard, Stephen, is not just the economy, as we talk about it broadly. The other key issue is the quality of public services, which is entirely within the domain of government and the state. What happens to public health, to public education, to safety and security, etc., etc. These matters are fundamentally important as well, and we need everybody aligned around the same objectives.
Trevor Manuel, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate the time. Anti-apartheid activist, a finance minister, a former member of the Government of National Unity, a planning minister, and now chair at Old Mutual. 19 after 7.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
All right, so we found out last night that the ANC now says it has been involved in some discussions with some political parties. And during the day yesterday, the ANC Secretary-General, Fikile Mbalula, said they had been told by Umkhonto we Sizwe officials that only former President Jacob Zuma could make decisions about possible negotiations, and they couldn't get hold of him. Then last night, MK has said it was ready to negotiate with the ANC. Well, let's give them a chance to speak for themselves. The national spokesperson from Umkhonto we Sizwe is Nhlamulo Ndlela. Nhlamulo, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
So just to confirm, you're prepared to talk to the ANC? Does that mean, in principle, you are prepared to join a government of national unity?
Let's start by the comment that you made that President Zuma, the perception that's been created, is the only one that makes decisions. No, that's incorrect. President Zuma engages with the National Leadership Corps and consults accordingly, and we all discuss many matters that we all come to a decision and a conclusion on, and obviously move forward on the basis of a unified decision, not just an individual. So let's just clarify that.
Okay, but Sikhle Ngubane told us last week on this program at the Results Operations Centre on Friday morning, just before 9 o'clock, that every decision was made by Jacob Zuma. And I pressed him on this point because it was such an interesting thing to say. I said, so every decision? He said, yes. I then went on to say, so is Umkhonto we Sizwe Jacob Zuma, and is Jacob Zuma Umkhonto we Sizwe? His answer to that was yes.
Yes, we draw wisdom from a political genius such as President Zuma, but the final decisions are made by all of us. So it does not necessarily mean, remember, I am the spokesperson. I'm more eloquent than him, I guess, in English. So that's just the position.
So your position is your view as spokesperson outranks the view of the Secretary General.
My view as a spokesperson is an extension of President Zuma and the team, including him.
Okay. All right, let's get back to where we were. In principle, are you prepared to join a government of national unity?
No, I mean, we say, we should not use words loosely. This so-called framework of government of national unity, we need to take into consideration what does that mean? Remember, government of national unity was formed in 1994 at the time when there were riots, there was civil war within South Africa, and there's fighting. And the aim thereof was to say, let's form a government that will unify us and end the issue of fighting and war and killings that were happening at the time. And remember, Mkhonto Sizwe was part of that as a military wing at the time that in 1961 when they were formed. So it was to say, let's end the war, let's end the fighting. That was the aim of the government of national unity. But let's be honest, Stephen, since then to now, that position that was taken, quite honestly, has been a perpetuation of poverty in our country. So we can't just be talking about a government of national unity, and take those and loosely use those words. We need to be careful here. Okay. We're willing to engage in discussions, absolutely. Get a sense of what any other political party that's engaging us, what their position is from a policy perspective, from a governance perspective. Of course, we're willing to listen, but let's not use words loosely. What does a government of national unity mean? Because those words were used then, and those same words which led to a government which, quite honestly, still continues today to protect a few and perpetuate poverty.
Okay, let me come at this from another way. Would you be, as Mkhonto Sizwe, are you prepared to work with the ANC, with Cyril Ramaphosa as its leader, and with Cyril Ramaphosa as president? Or is your condition still that he can't be president?
I think we need to take into consideration what is a condition and what is not. We've said that, yes, we will not engage with the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll engage with the ANC. And what we're saying, effectively, is that they themselves have got policies that under his leadership, they've not implemented to liberate our people. Have they? Stephen? No. So how can we engage with individuals whereby we still have to be negotiating policy and whether which policy must be implemented when in actual fact their own policy position says that they ought to be implementing those policies? Has he implemented any of them? No. So we've got our policies. They've got their own policies. Some of them, like I mentioned, when we engage in any coalition or any discussion, we look at policy alignment. And where policies align, which we know some of their policies align with ours, have not been implemented under his leadership. So when we say we're not engaging with the policy, with the ANC of Ramaphosa, we mean the ANC that is incompetent.
Okay.
We cannot engage whereby for the next 5 years, we're going to be discussing whether we must implement a policy or not. Our South Africans are tired of politicking.
Okay.
People want to see change.
Okay, I accept all of that. So what you're saying then is it kind of sounds like a pretty hard no. That you don't want to work with Ramaphosa. I mean, the ANC you'll negotiate, but to me it sounds like you're saying not with Ramaphosa.
Well, I don't know what's sounding in your ear, but I'm telling you what I've just told you. That's just the reality. Well, let's talk a policy position, and how it's sounding is a different situation. I'm saying to you that we'll engage with the ANC. We've requested them. Our statement is very clear. We're engaged. Remember, they've also made overtures. We've said engage us formally. So they must engage us formally, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. For there to be engagement, there may be one or two other things that we need to get to first. I would presume you have to accept the outcome of the election. Do you accept that you got 14.58% of the vote?
Remember, we're busy with a concurrent process where we're challenging that with the courts. So we've stated that we reject that. We've got enough evidence and to demonstrate the discrepancies that have led to us raising an objection that the IEC has taken lightly. So we will engage and leverage, the legal avenues that are before us and that are available to us, which is what we're doing. Because those 58 seats that you see as 58 seats could lead to 120. Who knows?
120 seats? Really?
Who says? Sorry, what's that?
You really think you could go from 14.58% of the vote to about 30% of the vote, 120 seats?
And you think the DA is more popular than the MK party? Really?
Well, the elections suggest that they are.
Well, yeah, rigged elections.
Well, you don't have evidence of that. You, as yet, have presented no evidence of that.
Who tells you I don't have evidence? I've told you.
Then present it.
We have submitted.
But Inhlamono presented. And who have you presented it to?
Stephen, we've presented evidence.
To
I'm
who?
Telling you.
To who?
To the IEC. We're still going to. We presented evidence to the IEC. They nonchalantly, proceeded with a declaration of results without taking those same evidence, the same evidence into.
Are you going to present it to a court? Are you going to present? I mean, that's the next step. You would present it to a court. Are you going to do that?
Well, what's the whole point of going to court if you don't have evidence?
So you have evidence you will present to a court, yes or no?
I think this is the fourth time I'm telling you that we've got evidence.
Okay.
That we're
Then
going to
tell
court
us.
on the
Then
basis
tell
of
us
evidence.
about it, Ntlumulo. There's no reason you can't tell us about it. If it goes to court in the moment that you submit your papers, it will all be public anyway. So there's nothing that
Exactly.
stops you. So present it. Tell us what it is.
No, why must I tell you my legal strategy? I'm not going to tell you that right now.
Frankly,
I've got feeling
let me put it to you bluntly so that you can deny it. I would like to suggest to you that as Mkhonto Wesizwe, you do not have evidence. And the reason that you will not present it to us now, here on national radio, where the entire country can listen, is because you don't have it.
I would say that's a short-sighted, pusillanimous statement from Stephen Grootes, who doesn't understand the dynamics of what's happening.
Okay, but present the evidence. What is holding you back from presenting it, Ntlumulo? Come on.
What's the whole point of going to court? I mean, I'm going to present it in any case. You just wait and see.
Okay. At some point in the next, let's call it 7, 8, 9 days, by next Sunday, as I understand the legalities, Parliament and the provincial legislatures need to meet. As things stand, you say you're still disputing the evidence. Will you, as MK, take your seats in the provincial legislatures and Parliament, or will you wait for this process to happen first?
This is an urgent matter. And just like many, you seem to be taking things very lightly and nonchalantly. That's the problem. Why are we as South Africans, why do we take things such as this so lightly, Stephen? That's what we should be asking ourselves.
Well, Ntlumulo, if you wouldn't mind answering the question, you know.
And on the basis of that, no, what I'm saying to you is that people take things lightly. Mkhonto Wesizwe is not going to take things lightly. And that's why we're taking the approach that we are. We are going to engage on this on an urgent basis. And that's that.
Okay.
So these are concurrent processes that are happening. Yes, sure. We know that they're supposed to be swearing in, but yes, there's also an issue that ought to be dealt with and needs to be dealt with that is going to be dealt with.
Are your members going to be sworn in as members of Parliament and provincial legislatures or not?
At the right time.
So no.
No, you can't say. I'm saying to you, we're going to be sworn in. The issue is timing, isn't it?
But not with everybody else. All the other MPs will be sworn in, but not you.
Hold on. The court engagement could lead to something else, wouldn't you say? So we can't just say, yes, on that day, this is going to be the fact. When the courts then, give us a different line of march.
Okay, so the only MP who might be sworn in at this moment is Jabulani Khumalo.
Well, is that your position? You and Jabulani Khumalo,
he's number one on the list.
Jabulani Khumalo is an expelled member. And by the way, let's just clarify, just for those that don't understand. He's an expelled individual from the party. And we've communicated with the Parliament Secretary accordingly, and he won't be sworn in. So for those that were thinking that that's the case, unfortunately, it's not going to be the case. Any expelled member from the party will not be sworn in.
Ntlumulo Ntlela, thank you for the engagement. He's the spokesperson from Mkhonto Wesizwe.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Bit late, Zai. Sorry, Nigeria tonight.
Yes, Coach Hugo Bruges has the team fired up. 9 p.m. that kickoff.
We won against Morocco. And you see what happens in AFCON. You see now we play against Algeria. We are not afraid anymore because we know what we are, what the qualities we have. And we're not thinking about, Nigeria, Morocco, Ghana. No, we just play our game. And therefore, to have that confidence and to believe in yourself is playing an AFCON like we did very important.
Now, after shocking Nigeria in their own backyard in November last year and stealing a point in the opening game of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, Lesotho coach Leslie Notsi is backing his team against Zimbabwe this afternoon. 3 p.m. is the kickoff.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because they've had a team that played in the previous qualifications. The 2026 World Cup qualifiers, and then with the the previous coach. Now with the new coach, different players, so it's like a closed book for now, because we have noticed that there have been some changes in terms of personnel, players within the team setup, so and a different coach. So it's going to be a very tricky match.
And finally, golf. Werner Dazel holds a one-stroke lead into the second round of the Sunbet Challenge hosted by Sun City. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, more on coalitions, more on whether you should stop at traffic lights in dangerous areas. You're with SFM leading the conversation just after 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the rand has continued to hover in negative terrain as traders remain on edge until there's some clarity over the future of the country's administration. The local currency is expected to be fairly volatile and headline-driven in the short term. The ANC says the aim of its proposed government of national unity is to deal with the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment and inequality. The ANC has opted for a government of national unity after elections in which it lost its majority for the first time since the end of apartheid 30 years ago. And the Umkhonto weSizwe party and the ANC have confirmed they will be meeting soon. The MK party is a splinter party whose leader is the former ANC president, Jacob Zuma. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. The Mopani Highway coming out of Shoshanguve towards Pretoria this morning remains heavily backed up. It's a crash at XX and traffic is pretty extremely back behind that. You might want to avoid it and just exit the area on the M35. The Soutpan Road is the alternative. The R21 towards the airport queuing up into the Olifantsfontein roadwork section, and a crash on the Mike 1 north at Buccleuch. That seems to be holding traffic from Woodmead as well as N1 and N3 routes linking through Buccleuch onto the N1 towards Midrand. Vic and Cedar, a collision there causing delays generally on both of those routes in the four-ways area. Durban, the M4, as we forecast a little bit earlier, is now queuing up into the city centre. It's the closure of Brook Street, which is the extension of the M4, and that just forces traffic. If you miss the Esplanade off-ramp, you then have to sort of double back into the market area and then head up and get into Pixley Kisermi. So it just gets a bit busy with that through route being closed off. In Cape Town, a crash on the N2 inbound in front of Khayelitsha, the collision involving a pedestrian before the R300. Traffic parking back through to Spine Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intel Lechela, morning again. How are the markets?
Well, in Asia, stocks are still mixed as markets eye trade data from China while digesting a rate cut from the ECB. Some saying this could be the start of a global rate cutting cycle. With that, the Japanese Nikkei is trading 0.23% lower and China's Shanghai Composite losing 0.4%. In Wall Street, futures are in the green. Traders are awaiting that all-important jobs print out from the US, which would provide clues on how the labor market is performing. Back at home, the JSE staging a rebound, closing the day in the green with the all-share gaining 0.38%. The local unit in the meantime pretty range bound, trading between 18.90 and 18.99. It's currently sitting at 18.92 against the dollar.
And then the sugar industry claims the sugar tax is costing jobs. I mean, there's a lot going on in that industry at the moment.
It really is under pressure. It's recorded more than 16,000 jobs lost in the past 7 years. This comes as the sector struggles with the long-term implications of the sugar tax. Now, sugar tax was mainly introduced to curb obesity and the associated risk of diabetes, heart disease, and cancer in 2018. According to the South African Cane Growers Association, the tax was supposed to be reviewed under the Sugarcane Value Chain Master Plan, but this promise was not kept. And to date, no meaningful engagement has been undertaken with the industry. There's been two major mills that have been hit, including Tongaat Hewland and Gledhow. Both have been placed in business rescue, and industry players raise concerns about this, saying they are worried by the precarious financial position of both mills. Now, cane growers have warned of more job losses because the sugar tax is due to increase yet again next year. And it further said that the government needs to support the industry to safeguard the jobs in the sector.
And MultiChoice says it'll have a full year loss.
Now, times are tough for MultiChoice as it grapples with a cocktail of negatives, including a weak macroeconomic and consumer environment, heightened investment in Showmax, and significant foreign exchange losses resulting from the sharp deterioration of the Nigerian naira, and so expects its core losses to decline by 19 to 23%. In a trading update, MultiChoice pointed to tough macroeconomic conditions, and in an attempt to turn its fortunes around, the group says it'll be focusing on cost optimization and cash management, including reduced decoder subsidies, which continue to yield a positive economic outcomes. Now, the update comes after MultiChoice and Canal Plus agreed on a takeover deal. The deal, however, is still awaiting regulatory approvals.
Ntawling Lechela, thank you very much indeed. Back on Monday, more business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, well, you heard that conversation with Trevor Manuel. You heard that conversation with Mkhonto weSizwe, their spokesperson. Also, of course, the Government of National Unity being proposed by the ANC. Andrew and Matlasana, how do you see MK?
No, Stephen, to congratulate you. That was a very good interview.
Thank you.
Unlike yesterday, I really appreciate the way that you were pushing back. Thank you. I appreciate that. At the end of the day, it's their prerogative whether they're going to tell us the evidence or they're not going to share with us the evidence. I wish they would share with us the evidence, but I understand where they're coming from. Sometimes I'm not happy with the way our courts handle Jacob Zuma. Sometimes I'm not happy with the way that our media handles Jacob Zuma. It's like the Trump effect. If you like Zuma, the courts are biased. If you don't like Zuma, so I understand where they are coming.
Yeah.
That it will be good evidence, though.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, thank you. And Matlasana, losing you on that line a little bit. But for me, it is about the evidence. I mean, this is why our court system is open. That's kind of the whole point. Elvin and Itaquini. Elvin, hi.
A very good morning, Stephen. Thanks so much for taking my call. I just would like to comment, not really about Jabulani Kumalo or Trevor Manuel this morning, but talking about elections as a whole. I think the biggest winner here is democracy. And if we look back at the results from this election, democracy is the winner at the end of the day. But the question that I'm going to ask is, why do we have the majority of the population of the Republic of South Africa registered voters and voting? I mean, we've got about 29 million registered voters. Out of that, about 16 million presented themselves over the 2024 provincial and national elections. So I think the question that I'd like to ask our leaders, and I would like for the public as well to engage, is why don't people want to register to vote? Because there's really a big chunk of the public within this republic that are not voting.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to look at why. That's number one. And number two, I think the youth vote, the future generations of this country, the future leaders of this country. Well, I really don't know whether we're going to have quality leaders, but they haven't really showed interest in this process. And I think we've got to do a little bit of introspection here, and we've got to ask these questions. So I'd love to leave that to you and to the rest of the country to obviously engage in my questions this morning. Thank you for a fantastic show.
All right, Elvin, thank you very much indeed. Look, I mean, I think there's a lot about why people don't vote, and I think some people vote because they don't think it'll change anything. And that, for me, is the scariest thing. That's why, I mean, your point about democracy, is absolutely valid. We need people to be part of it. I think otherwise we're going nowhere. Benny and Tswane. Benny, hi, coalitions.
Yes, Stephen. Actually, it was not about coalition. It was about this government of national unity. I don't understand why, if the ANC loses, then there is a government of national unity. Because as the MK spokesman, I'm not MK. I don't like MK. I don't even put myself near MK. Usually, a government of national unity, it's when there is destabilization or friction. But because the ANC want to lead, it wants to be relevant, it calls for a government of national unity. Actually, there should be a coalition or rerun of the votes, not this government of national unity. On which basis does the ANC have this right to lead even this, because it's now not even in government. There'll be a new formation of a government. The ANC have no right to lead and even to tell people how to work, how to do their how to line up this new government. It's irrelevant for the ANC to lead and to say to people they need a government of nations. It's not their call.
Yeah. No, Benny, that's an interesting point, actually. Thank you. I mean, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, I think that people are, the idea of why should you dominate it in a way. Benny, thank you. Jacques in KwaZulu-Natal, Umkhonto weSizwe. Hi, Jacques.
Morning to you and your team. Two things I just wanted to point out. I think the spokesman for the MK is really, really well thought by Mr. Zuma. I think he's like he says that, about poverty. Does he recognize that his leader wears a watch that's almost 1.2 million rand, an Audemars Piguet, Royal Oak? So I think he doesn't understand what poverty means. Poverty means the entrepreneur that battles every day to try to get to work, to pay staff, and try to live by the rules of the road, rules of the country. With the MK, I think we are playing into Mr. Zuma's hands again. I think his spokesperson, he has a very, very, very nice and eloquent spokesperson that basically renders the English language to his feet. And by that I mean is that there's no misunderstanding about what he says in English. So that's why he talks much, much less than he did in the ANC. So those are the lessons that he's learned. And like I said, with the questions that you ask him, I don't think that he was ever going to answer the question the way that you and your thought that they were. And I think, like I said, if you take a step back, I think we're playing into his game as well. If he, as a wounded child, wants to go back to his parent party, let him be the wounded child that he wants to be. Because he's going back to the party that he had. And going back to the President Ramaphosa, I think that since Mr. Ramaphosa or President Ramaphosa was the deputy president, wasn't he managing Mr. Ramaphosa or President Ramaphosa at the time for all those years? Yeah. So if he was the person, if he was the leader of the party and to do the things that he feels is right now within the MK, why didn't he do it when he had a majority within the ANC? Didn't need any of the other parties. So, like I said, Stephen, I think that the MK is actually just better managed in terms of how they learn from the lessons that from the ANC when he was running it, when former President Zuma was running it. And like I said, we got to take note that what he said was that he is a very intelligent person, and if we keep on playing his game, so we might come to play chess and he's playing checkers. Yeah. So are we going to stop playing chess and start playing checkers so we do what he wants, or are we going to just sit back, fold our arms, and let's see how long this person can live for the next 20 years? Because he isn't going to live forever. And like I said, the youth of this country need to understand. No, the youth of the country need to understand. In 20 years' time, when the youth are now adults or middle-aged people, what is going to be left for them?
Sure. All right, Jacques in KwaZulu-Natal, thank you. Interesting points there. And look, lots of different views. You would expect that on something like this. Thomas in Newcastle, Mbuyiso and Ladysmith, Nicholas, Lonwaba, we'll come to you. That's next. 7:45.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The clock is winding down and the world's most renowned games are drawing near. With a wide variety of delightful action such as basketball, badminton, cycling, hockey, handball and volleyball. It is less than 50 days to the Olympics. The world's top athletes are all chasing an Olympic medal. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport, the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
14 minutes to 8. Well, we spoke to Umkhonto weSizwe, we spoke to Trevor Manuel. Strong reaction to that, and of course, the conversation around whether there should be a government of national unity. Nicholas in East London, good morning. How do you feel about the idea?
Morning, Steve. And how are you doing?
I'm well. Go for it.
Good. Now, first, of all, Stephen, I just want to commend the ANC as an organization, together with its leader, President Ramaphosa, for this initiative of an inclusive government, which is motivated by how the voters and the people of South Africa have reacted in terms of voting. And for me, this is very important. It means they are just concerned about the plight of our people. Number two, you have just interviewed the so-called, spokesperson of the MK party. You know, I can sum up the whole thing, Steve, your interview, where it says something completely different from their Secretary General. When I was just analyzing the whole talk, because when you were engaging this gentleman, it sounds to me like a corrupt wisdom. You see, there's another thing, Steve, to be knowledgeable about something or to have knowledge. But it's another thing to apply this knowledge, which we call it wisdom. You know, when I was listening at, politicians sometimes they can look at us and as listeners, as people who are not thinkers. This is very clear that, to me, if the MK party is included in this inclusive arrangement on the government of the national unity, that will be a disaster for the nation. I just pray, Steve, that all what is happening, and even the opposition parties, for this time, for the sake of the South Africans, is that they've been struggling in poverty, lack of jobs. They can work and looking down to us as the beneficiaries of this democracy. May the Lord bless you, Steve. Thank you.
All right. Nicholas, thank you very much indeed. Okay, interesting views there from East London. Thomas in Newcastle. Thomas, it's been a little while, my friend. Good morning.
Hi, Steve. I better to get through to you, man. I call every day, basically, but that's for another day.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. You know, Steve, the unfortunate thing is most of us black South Africans, we feel we have more of a right than the white South African just because we went through apartheid. And look, apartheid was bad. My dad suffered it, and I got to see a bit of it. So it was bad. But right now, we can't be going forward looking backwards. What do I mean by that, Stephen? Right now, listening to the spokesperson of Mkhonto Wesizwe, there's just, even in his demeanor, he knows more than everyone else. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that he thinks South Africans like that just because he got 14% of the vote. Excuse if I'm quoting it wrong, but I think it's around there, 14%. And does he have the wisdom of all the other guys on the 70 odd percent? They are not the kingmakers as we would like to be admitting. The ANC can sit behind us, they sit back and say, okay, we will be the opposition. Can we make the government? We won't. The Mkhonto and probably the likes of Malema, they are just looking for anarchy and reason to perpetuate their fighting stance, not to build the country. You know what I'm saying? Because if government of national unity is good for the country, and everyone is wanting to be in for the good of the country, why don't you give it a chance? And then say it failed and struck it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, no, I think I see what you mean, Thomas. I don't know what's going to happen next. I think in a way this might be, and this is a very cynical view, the government of national unity might just be a negotiating position.
Of course, Steve. I'm aware. This is actually, I clap hands for Cyril Ramaphosa. I know we don't like him for all lot of reasons. He basically has said, I've not made a decision. You, South Africa, have made a decision in terms of who is in or who is out. We've called everybody. if we end up with the DA, is it the ANC's fault? No, it's not. The DA put up their hand and said, okay, we will be involved. If we end up with Mkondo and not the DA, whose fault is it? It's the DA's fault to set the dog. To me, I think that's how things should be. They played it very well, and those who want the peace and the prosperity of the country, and not the fighting and the black and the white, and come up for the sake of the country. That's what we want.
All right, Thomas in Newcastle, thank you. On the line from there. Yeah, interesting views. 8 minutes now to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just going to zoom into the Mopori Highway. The R80 had some big queues earlier this morning into a crash. It's still there at XX, leaving Shoshanguve. Traffic remains heavy as you come past Ruth First and down towards that crash scene. The Mike 1 going north out of Woodmead, a crash at Buccleuch, so quite a heavy backlog there on your way from Woodmead up towards the Mid-Rand area. And it looks like there may be some traffic lights down on Winnie Mandela at Leslie. Either that or it's just a very busy Friday, but there's delays going in and out of four ways on that section of Winnie Mandela. Durban's N3 inbound. Slow this morning, coming through from Pavilion down towards Sherwood. The M4 queuing up into the CBD. It's not the roadworks at Congella, it's the closure of Brook Street, the top end of the M4. So you sort of come into that closure, you have to divert down into the market and then a cut back along Dr. Pixley Kasemi into the CBD, and it just backs things up into that central area. Cape Town, the collision on the M2 into town at Khayelitsha has been cleared. There is a crash on Van Riebeeck Road at Eerste Rivier, holding traffic towards the Blackheath area, and a bit of traffic on the R300 this morning, queuing through Brackenfell towards a turn to the N1 inbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Well, 7 minutes to 8, the time. You know the number, of course, and there's a lot that's been happening today. We've been talking a lot about the Government of National Unity proposal from the ANC yesterday. You've got strong views, of course. I completely understand that around the idea of a Government of National Unity and around Umkhonto we Sizwe. I did kind of think that might happen. You heard what Trevor Manuel said as well. I was very taken by his comment that when you become an MP, you swear an oath to uphold the law, to obey the law. I thought that was very interesting. Important for us to check in very quickly in the situation in Cape Town. There's been a lot of flooding in the Western Cape, and some informal settlements have been flooded as well. Charlotte Powell is the spokesperson for the Disaster Risk Management Centre in the city of Cape Town. Charlotte, good morning.
Good morning to you and to all the listeners.
We've seen such heavy rain in KwaZulu-Natal, such heavy rain in the Eastern Cape. How's all of that affected you in Cape Town? You've had a lot of rain as well.
Yes, we had continuous rainfall for the last few days and has affected many informal settlements in our city. So the disaster management officers has made assessments in about 42 high-risk informal settlements. And there was approximately 1,222 structures that was flooded and approximately 2,300 people that have been affected.
What kind of help are you able to give them? Are you able to actually help people evacuate?
So at this stage, there are two communities that have been affected severely. That is Nomzamo in the Strand, as well as the area in Mufuleni, and we are arranging our community halls to assist those people to be evacuated until the water has subsided.
Are you concerned that there'll be more heavy rain? I mean, we're still kind of in the early phase of winter, your rainy season.
Yes. So we have a winter readiness task team that sits weekly, and we're mitigating the effects of the flooding and also trying to work out engineering impacts that can help alleviate water and flooding. So our roads and stormwater department is coming up with engineering interventions, as well as our urban mobility department. They're looking at the roadways, and then also human settlements is also coming up with ideas how to assist communities.
And it's a big long-term problem, Charlotte, that will come under, human settlements and housing. But people build in areas where there is land, and they usually need flat land. And in some cases, that means land that is easily flooded. We see this in KZN. We see it in Cape Town too, other places as well. Do you try and prevent people from living in certain areas that are prone to this kind of flooding? Do you try and take alternative measures there to stop flooding when it rains like this?
Yes, so it's very challenging for the city. Land availability in the city is scarce, and people normally settle in natural water courses like wetlands and detention ponds And then when they do relocate on this land, it's very difficult to place them alternatively on other land because there's no land available in the city. So it's very challenging for our Human Settlements Department, and of course the legislation is not easy. When people settle, we can't evict them immediately. And then also from a humanitarian perspective, you have to also provide alternative spaces for them.
Charlotte Powell, thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the Disaster Risk Management Centre in the city of Cape Town. 3 minutes now to 8.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
All right, good to hear from you this morning. Tabatso on the line from Everton. Tabatso, hi. Coalitions, how are you feeling about it this morning?
Good morning. I realize that your station is a station of the well-to-do. You can sense their demeanor. I'm calling from Everton, the most disadvantaged community in Gauteng. We are representing the poor, the ones who voted MK. Your listeners don't agree with MK. You can sense from what they are saying that they are the middle class. And now, for the first time, I think you get a call from Everton. And the other thing is that MK also and other organizations like PA, they've got evidence of vote rigging. So the caller before the previous, when he said the MK represents 14%, his facts are misplaced there on those bases. So really, this shows that the MK was voted more by people like me, the poor people of this country, and they don't have the ability to make calls to radio stations like yours. So now my point here is, and we the poor don't feel the challenges in the country like your middle class, and we are the ones who voted MK, and whatever that the MK spokesperson was saying, they resonate very warmly with us, the poor of the country, the ones who voted MK, the ones who felt Jacob Zuma's leadership when there was no load shedding. When there's load shedding in communities like ours, it's like we are living in hell.
So Tabatso, sure. And please, you don't need to call me sir. I don't know if you meant to. But let me just say a couple of things. I mean, firstly, SFM has a very diverse audience. I accept your point that very poor people don't listen, and I think that's also because this is an English radio station, and I think language has a lot to do with it.
They never went to school here.
No, sure. But I also think,
poor, yes.
Yeah, but I also think, though, that when you talk about the poor are very diverse. I mean, we have calls from people in Nanda and KwaZulu-Natal. I don't think they're any richer than even Everton, and many of them might have voted from Kunta-Wesizwe, but, poorer people in Khayelitsha may not. I don't know how you feel about that, but I do think that's maybe something worth saying.
The ones that you think are poor, that you mentioned, there are places that they might have called from. They don't represent the overwhelming majority of the poor people.
Well, I don't think any political party does, Tabatso. I don't think you can say MK does, or the EFF does, or Patriotic Alliance does. It's diverse. Tabatso, are you still with us? All right, Tabatso, I'm sorry, we seem to have lost your line there in Everton. I'm not sure why. All right, more to come. We'll speak to the Secretary to Parliament. There are a couple of technical questions about the election of a president that I think we need to get to. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, the rand falls amid political uncertainty and Trump holds his first rally since fraud conviction. Good morning. The rand has continued to hover in negative terrain as traders remain on edge until there's some clarity over the future of the country's administration. The local currency is expected to be fairly volatile and headline-driven in the short term. The greenback is steady but is still expected to lose around 0.5% this week. This, as evidence of a deteriorating US labor market, strengthens chances of a Federal Reserve interest rate decrease this year. The rand is currently trading at 18.95 rand to the US dollar. The ANC says the aim of its proposed government of national unity is to deal with the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment and inequality. The ANC has opted for a government of national unity after elections in which it lost its majority for the first time since the end of apartheid 30 years ago. Party President Cyril Ramaphosa briefed the media in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, on the outcomes of a special ANC National Executive Committee meeting on coalition talks.
The modalities of the Government of National Unity will take into account the conditions prevailing at this moment in our country's history. The purpose of the Government of National Unity must be first and foremost be to tackle the pressing issues that South Africans want to be addressed. These issues include job creation and the growth of our economy that will be inclusive, the high cost of living, service delivery, crime and corruption.
Both the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party and the ANC have confirmed they will be meeting soon. The MK Party is a splinter party whose leader is the former ANC President Jacob Zuma. The MK Party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndlela says they will keep an open mind during their meeting with the ANC.
The reality is the following. We've never received a formal invite or in the form of a letter that says we want to have discussions and engage in coalition talks with yourselves. That has not happened yet. No, engagements do not necessarily mean a meeting where we sit across the table with them. Engagements mean exactly what I'm referring to. These are overtures. These are just engagements where, they've called us, they've called certain leaders of our party to get a sense as to what the climate is to engage in discussions. And that's just been that.
The N12 between Oudtshoorn and De Rust and the Little Karoo has been reopened. The road was closed on Monday evening following flooding in the area. Western Cape traffic authorities have advised motorists to drive with caution. However, the Meiringspoort Pass is still closed. The alternative route to and from the Central Karoo is the N9 via Willowmore. Further afield, and finally, former US President Donald Trump has been answering questions from supporters at his first campaign rally since his criminal conviction for fraud last week. He addressed a cheering crowd in a mega church in Phoenix in the swing state of Arizona. Trump says crime is out of control because of what he calls an invasion of criminal gangs across the US southern border. The BBC's Emma Vardy has more.
When he took to the stage, he hit out at his conviction in New York, calling it a rigged trial. Donald Trump talked at length about illegal crossings over the Mexican border, saying he would bring back thousands of US troops from overseas to help secure it. His next stop was a fundraising dinner in San Francisco, with tickets selling for tens of thousands of dollars, and he heads to another swing state, Nevada, next, back on the campaign trail in earnest after being confined to a courtroom for much of the past 2 months.
Recapping the top story, the rand has continued to hover in negative terrain as traders remain on edge until there's some clarity over the future of the country's administration. The local currency is expected to be fairly volatile and headline-driven in the short term. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. It's soccer action to look forward to at 9 p.m. tonight. Bafana will be taking on Nigeria. And we have cricket with the Proteas star Heinrich Klaasen saying the New York pitch could level the field in the Proteas T20 World Cup clash against the Netherlands. That's tomorrow. All these stories and more just before 8:30.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
In Pretoria, there's been a collision scene. It's on the M1 South as you approach the N4 Emalahleni exit. So coming through from Stormful roadside, there is a backlog approaching that particular scene. The R21 heading to the airport. Don't forget the roadworks at Clayville. That's a backlog coming into that particular area. And some heavy traffic into four ways this morning. Cedar Road from Danefern, a crash at Witkoppen, causing a big delay, and there's some issues on William Mandela with some congestion around the Leslie Junction, both in and out of four ways, very slow. Durban on a pretty gentle Friday. It stays busy, jam-packed on the N2 North from the Booth Road Bridge side through to Westwood Mall. The N3 going through Spaghetti Junction to Sherwood stays busy as well. And Cape Town, it looks like something may have just happened on the N7 southbound coming through from Plattercliff, just slow approaching the Bosmansdam exit. The highways are pretty gentle with the exception of the M5, which stays under queuing pressure through Rondebosch towards the N2 highway off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
6 minutes after 8, good morning, you're with SAFM Sunrise. Khulile George is the Secretary to Parliament, due to speak to him in the next couple of moments. There are a couple of really important technical questions that I really want to get to about how we elect a president and all of that, because I think it is going to be very, very important. So we'll hear from him in the next little while. We'll talk also Benylin cough syrup, given the all clear, that to come as well. And then don't forget, from 8:30, your story of the week. What for you is the most important thing that happened this week? Might well be a call about coalitions. Good morning.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Bakaka searching for their first victory to cement their plan of returning to the rooftop of Ibhola laseMzansi. Yet, the Natal Rich Boys believe that tears of joy belong to them. This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Catch Baroka FC versus Richards Bay FC this Saturday, 8 June at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
All right, you know the number 086 000 2032. At the moment we get the Secretary of Parliament, we'll bring him to you. Mandla, you're on the line from Ermelo. Mandla, hi. How are you feeling about this idea of a government of national unity? Mandla, good morning.
Yes, Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well. You're on the radio. Go for it.
Yes. No, this government of national unity will not work, Stephen. But what I'm going to say here is our president has failed us big time as the poor class. He failed also to acknowledge that he didn't lead the country in these 5 years to the right direction. And what he said on the eve of on the election day, the results day, when he said the people have spoken, whether we like it or not, that shows me it doesn't take the responsibility of saying, you know what, guys, I've failed you as a leader of the country, and I've failed also as a leader of ANC. Let's try and make something better in the coming elections, you see. So now this government of unity, for me, I don't think is going to work, because now, what if, I'm just putting a scenario, what if it says in these 5 years the government of national unity works, and then the coming election, do we have to vote?
Sure, Mandla, yeah. Sheesh. Yeah.
So it don't work for me. There will be opposition and people will argue and what, all those things. So I don't think the president is too hard.
So you want real politics?
Yeah, we need real politics.
Yeah.
The president was supposed to say, I acknowledge, I failed you guys as a leader, I failed you guys as a leader of also ANC. Sure. And you see this. And then now work on making sure that the next coming election they get the majority.
All right.
So that's it.
All right, Mandla and Ermelo. No, interesting point, an important point actually. Politics is normal, says Mandla. I like that idea. If it works, do we not have to vote? Thank you. 10 minutes after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Well, the National Assembly and Parliament have now received the formal list of candidates of people who will be sworn in as MPs when Parliament meets for the first time after the elections, presumably sometime next week. The Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, will swear in MPs. At that first meeting, MPs have to elect a Speaker and a Deputy Speaker. They also have to elect a President. And presumably it's at that moment that we'll know how these coalition discussions are actually going to end. The Secretary to Parliament is Kulile George. Mr. George, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to all the SFM listeners.
Firstly, you don't have a date yet for this first sitting. Is that between the Chief Justice and the parties?
No, it's solely the prerogative of the Chief Justice in terms of the Constitution, and we are keenly awaiting for him to determine the date and time as envisaged in the Constitution.
So if he
what needs to happen, Stephen, is that it must take place within 14 days after the results shall have been declared. In this instance, the results have been duly declared on Sunday, the 2nd of June, by the IEC.
So it has to be by, I presume then, next Saturday, not tomorrow, but Saturday week. By next Saturday, we have to have a meeting?
No, the outer date of the 14th day is Sunday, but as we know, Sunday is a public holiday the next day.
Yeah.
So there are many permutations around that, and the Chief Justice shall give guidance on the date in which he has chosen for such a sitting.
Okay. So you have the list of people who would be sworn in, and if we can just focus on the National Assembly for a moment. I don't want to ignore the National Council of Provinces, but there's certain things that happen in the National Assembly that are quite important. You have the list of people. You would expect them all to be there, all 400 of them, when the session is called.
Yes, all of them are expected, Stephen, because they have now been duly elected as members of the National Assembly. So when we invite all of them, we will invite 400 members to be present, to be sworn in on a date that shall have been publicly announced. And after that, the proceedings will fall into the equation of electing office bearers.
Okay. What happens if a party decides not to attend? If their members are not there, what happens?
If parties, for whatever reason, Stephen, decide not to attend, the proceedings of the National Assembly sitting shall continue. For those members who are present, they will be sworn in as members of the National Assembly so that they can be activated to perform the business of the House that shall have been decided on that day. A member who is not there, all we will be guarding as the National Assembly is to ensure that a quorum is required for such a sitting, and such a quorum is determined in terms of Section 53, 1 and B of the Constitution of the Republic, and it says 1/3 of the members present constitutes a quorum for such a sitting.
Okay. If an MP is not there, so if a party decides not to send its MPs or whatever happens, can they be sworn in at a later date?
Yes, at a later date, those members shall be sworn in. So those who are present, remember, you are elected as a member, but before you perform public duty in terms of the Constitution, Section 48, 1B of the Constitution of the Republic says members must be sworn in before they perform. So it's an operative word, must be. They may not be sworn, they must be sworn in before they perform. It's the same, Stephen. If you are declared elected as a president candidate, you become a president-elect of the country. Before you perform the duties, you need to be operationalized by being sworn in terms of faithfulness to the Republic and loyalty to the Constitution.
Is there a deadline? So say, for example, people are supposed to be sworn in next week, Sunday, just for argument's sake, and people don't come. My understanding is that in Parliament, if you're a member of Parliament, you're not allowed to be absent for more than 3 weeks. If you're not sworn in after 3 weeks, so 4 weeks from this coming Sunday, what happens then? Or can you only be sworn in 6 months' time if you want?
Rules of Parliament will govern you as a member, because you are already a member once you have been activated into service, meaning you have been sworn in. And those rules, indeed, as you correctly cite them, they are applicable to members who are in active duty in Parliament. So a member who has not been in active duty has not been activated to perform his duties in terms of the jurisdiction of Parliament's rules. So in that particular instance, it will be clear that it's a political decision for whatever reasons of a party. The only people who can't be there is people who would have advised us, Stephen, to say, I am no longer taking up my seat. For whatever reason, I have resigned, or a person demises between now and the date of the first sitting. In that case, replacement procedures take place in accordance with the Electoral Act.
Okay, what I'm trying to get to is if a party decides not to take their seats, they could decide not to take their seats for quite a long time, and there would just be empty seats in Parliament because they wouldn't have taken the oath.
The issues around the quorum of the business of the House, out of 400 members, there are decisions that require the majority of members of the House, meaning 50 plus 1. There are also decisions that require 2/3 of the members. There are decisions that require 1/3 of members. So the only impact that can be felt is the extent to which how many members were not to be there. But the rest of members...
Will that person still be sworn in, or do you receive a letter from the leadership of the political party saying this person's been expelled and must no longer be sworn in?
Stephen, in terms of Section 57 of the Electoral Act of 1998, as amended, the act of determining and declaring candidates that they have been duly elected is the duty of the IEC. They have performed that task on the 2nd of June and publicly advised everyone that the National Assembly has got 400 seats. Attached to that 400 seats is a list of which the IEC yesterday handed over to Chief Justice, who in turn handed over to Parliament. So we now have a list of 400 members who are duly elected, comprising of 18 political parties in accordance with the outcome of election. Party A has 50, Party B has 100, and so on and so on. So that person is a member. If that member is no longer keen to take the seat, which normally happens, a member will write to us and say, I'm no longer keen to take the seat. Likewise, political parties will be able to say, we have X number of people in the outcome of election. Please be advised that member A or B is no longer a member, citing whatever reason, expulsion or the member has been moved for whatever reason. We are required to hear from the member concerned. I am no longer taking my seat due to actions of my party or decision of my party. So we're still required to act in terms of the guidance of common law to be able to speak to a member in terms of confirmation of that. It has been like that, regardless of the question before that you are asking now, the circumstances. It has been like that. Members would remove certain members for whatever reason, but we are required to receive letters from such members because the seat is for a member.
Okay, so if you don't get that letter from the person saying I actually do accept the resignation or I have been expelled, that person could take their seat.
Correctly so. But we shall have been in a position to inquire about that because we have been formally advised by a political party. So our duty is to inquire from that person to say there is this particular matter. Because you will never know, Stephen, rights enshrined in the Constitution and common law is that somebody may go to the party appeal or a person may go to court to protect their rights. We don't know. We are not in that equation. But what we are required is to inquire from the person. And we have been doing that even in the past. When a party advises us, we will then ask a member because the seat is allocated to a member. That member may be coming from a party, but it is not a party seat, it's a member seat because you become declared elected as a member of the National Assembly.
Okay. I'm sorry, there are lots of technical questions, Mr. George, but I think they're going to be important. After the swearing in, so the MPs are all there, there's an election for Speaker and Deputy Speaker, and then there's an election for a President. Who presides over that election? Is it the Speaker, the newly elected Speaker, or is it the Chief Justice still?
It is in sequence. Remember, first there is members to be sworn in. To swear in those members, there must be a presiding person. In this case, it will be the Chief Justice who preside over that sitting. And the Chief Justice, after swearing in members, will then call for nomination for filling of positions that are vacant. And those positions are office bearer position, meaning the Speaker of the National Assembly. The second position, Stephen, is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. And then the third position is the President, a vacant position in terms of the outcome of election, not vacant, sorry, in terms of president-elect. So those are the three positions that are eligible to be contested, and the process will be in accordance with the rules set by Chief Justice, and Schedule 3 of the Constitution of the Republic governs such a process.
So the Chief Justice also oversees the election of the President?
The Chief Justice oversees the election of the Speaker first, and once candidates contest, there's an outcome through secret ballot, then that candidate is declared duly elected as the Speaker of the National Assembly. That candidate then moves into the seat to take the presiding on the election, following the same procedure for the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. And then after the Deputy Speaker has been duly elected, after a round of procedures, then the Chief Justice will then adjourn the session, then thereafter come back to the podium, call for nomination for a candidate to be the President of the Republic of South Africa. Okay, and the Chief Justice will preside on that seat.
Okay, cool. So the Chief Justice presides over the election of the President as well.
Yes,
that's my point.
Yes.
Okay.
Except the Deputy Speaker.
Sure. Okay.
Same applies for the National Council of Provinces.
Okay,
which shall take place the next day.
Sorry, Mr.
Justice
George.
preside.
We're going to run out of time, and this is technical, but I think it's going to be important. Now, you just need to stick to this. And I'm sorry to interrupt. In the election of a president, there are 400 MPs. Does the president have to be elected with over 200 votes, 200 plus 1, or can they be elected with fewer than that?
If there is a full sitting, Stephen, let's say 400 members all show up, and on the basis of all show up, there's an election procedure as determined in Schedule 3, Part 9, and Part 4 of the schedule of the Constitution. So in that instance, there will be a call for nomination of candidates. If there's one candidate that is nominated and there is no contesting candidate, that candidate shall be declared duly elected as President-elect of the Republic. If there's two candidates, 3 or 4, then a secret ballot mechanism will then ensue, which we will administer in terms of assisting the Chief Justice, and then as returning officers, we will then hand over the results to the Chief Justice, who shall pronounce on the results. The candidate who shall win is the candidate who received the majority of votes cast. So it can be 400 if the majority are all there casting, there's no spoiled vote, 201 votes becomes the majority. If there's 180 members present and there's no spoiled ballot, or members who have decided not to exercise their right to vote, so the majority of those who are present, provided there's a quorum, constitute the winner of the outcome.
So there needs to be more than half the people who are in the parliament at the time.
At a particular time, in terms of this sitting, the quorum is determined in terms of Section 53 of the Constitution, that says a 1/3 of members present will constitute a quorum.
Let me put it another way, and I'm sorry this is going to be important. So if there are 400 MPs, you need 200 plus 1. If there are 200 MPs, you need half of that plus 1. If there are 300 MPs, you need 151.
Yes. In this case, 1/3 of 400 members, in line with the Constitution that says any other question shall be decided by 1/3 of members. So 400 is 134 members. If there's 134 members who have been duly sworn in, the House is in quorum.
Okay. What happens if there's just no one who gets a majority? I mean, what happens?
If no one gets it, depends. It will be informed by a number of candidates contesting. If it's 3, 4, or 5, then the elimination procedure takes place. Stephen Grootes might have received 53 of the 160 votes. Somebody else might have received 34. The other one must have received 80. The other one 18. Then you eliminate, depending on the total candidates. If there were 5, you eliminate those ones until you are left with 2 candidates. And the majority of the votes cast on behalf of those 2 by members who shall have exercised their secret ballot vote, then the majority of that outcome becomes the winner.
Okay. So, I mean, it's possible that a whole lot of people would abstain because they would go along party lines and someone still doesn't get a majority.
In that instance, everybody abstain, which has never happened before, but as you say, a permutation might arise, then it means there is no candidate that has been elected, but the procedure outlines what will inform that reality. It's only if, for instance, there were to be a tie, and after a process, then the Chief Justice, in line with the rules, shall determine another date for a sitting to be able to continue the business until a candidate is elected.
All right, Mr. George.
But it's a highly unlikely scenario,
No,
given the number of members that Parliament shall have sworn in at a particular time to constitute a quorum.
Mr. George, thank you. I really appreciate you explaining this. It's very technical, and I suspect it's going to be important. Thank you. Kolila George is the Secretary to Parliament.
Mama Kiti, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Teigedal, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Hugo Bruce wants courage tonight.
Yes, he says the boys, they will be ready to take on Nigeria. It's going to be a cracker, rallying his team. 9 p.m. is the kickoff. Bafana will square off against the Super Eagles in Uyo, Nigeria. Following this crucial match, they'll host Zimbabwe. That's at the Free State Stadium in Bloemfontein come Tuesday at 6 p.m. Now, Coach Bruce is reflecting on Bafana's last encounter with Nigeria at the Africa Cup of Nations, expressing his confidence in his team's abilities.
We won against Morocco. And you see what happens in AFCON. You see now we play against Algeria. We are not afraid anymore because we know what we are, what the qualities we have. And we're not thinking about, Nigeria, Morocco, Ghana. No, we just play our game. And therefore, to have that confidence and to believe in yourself is playing an AFCON like we did very important.
Now, the University of Pretoria coach, Slisane Mochaung, says they're inspired by Raja Casablanca assistant coach Fadlu Davids, who recently became the latest South African to graduate with the UEFA Pro license.
Look, one has to obviously congratulate all the coaches and also congratulate Fadlu and say that's a motivation for me as a young coach. I want to find myself in that space, also learning from European trends and see how it goes. And it's also great. We need to be educated in terms of this. The profession that you guys took, you went through learning, you've learned these things, and we have to learn. We have to understand the game. We have to go to class and learn from. We will always be students of the game, and there are new trends every now and then. And for us to learn those is to be in class, is to be on the field.
That's University of Pretoria coach Lisane Motaung. Elsewhere, Premier League clubs have voted in favour of keeping video assistant referee next season. Wolves triggered a vote on the use of VAR after formally submitting a resolution to the Premier League. In order for VAR to be scrapped, 14 of the 20 Premier League clubs needed to vote in favour of doing so, but only Wolves voted in favour of the proposal, so they failed to gain any support from other top-flight clubs. That's a wrap of your sport on Sunrise for now. More coming up around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You with SFM leading the conversation. Your story of the week, that's next. What for you is the most important thing? I suspect there might be one or two about coalitions, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa will today visit the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape, where heavy downpour has caused floods. Over 3,000 people in the Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City metros have been displaced. The rand has continued to hover in negative terrain as traders remain on edge until there's some clarity over the future of the country's administration. The local currency is expected to be fairly volatile and headline-driven in the short term. And political analyst Musa Kulu says he does not believe Umkhonto weSizwe party members are being targeted. MK party member Mxolisi Zungu was gunned down in Katumana in KwaZulu-Natal on Wednesday. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a couple of standout queues around the country this morning. One is the N1 in Pretoria, southbound coming from Montana. There's a crash down by the N4 Emalafeni Highway exit, and that traffic is heavy. It's all the way back through Stormful. If you're about to on-ramp from Montana, you might want to seek alternative route. Olifantsfontein, absolutely jammed from Blue Hills through Lever Road all the way to the M1 bridge. A crash on Cedar Road down by Witkoppen, plus a bunch of faulty traffic lights means Cedar Road is really heavy from the Danefern side. And a collision, second one this morning. N3 north at Heldene, so traffic coming out of Albert from Ford Trekker Road stays backed up. Durban easing nicely. Don't forget it's the up run on Sunday. Comrades is here already. Durban through to Pietermaritzburg. Closures from very early in the morning on the Durban side, and then lifting as the runners go up and take their way through Fields Hill and Hillcrest and the old main roads. The usual route, but the closure staying inland around Pietermaritzburg, Ashburton later on in the day as the runners make their way to the finish line at PMB. Cape Town this morning, pretty gentle Friday. No major problems on your major highway routes. Perhaps a little bit busy on the M5 going north, but apart from that, it's a pretty decent run in towards central Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The National Pulse on SAFM.
And the big question from a SADC region issue is food security post-2025. Where are we at with those sort of deadlines?
We still have a long way to go, Ashraf, I should say. We, as a continent, we've set very steep targets for ourselves. And from the work that we've been doing and the support we've been giving to our member states, we recognize that there's still a lot of work to do. And we are already currently looking at how we can proceed in the next 10 years. So as we speak, we are in the process of defining a 10-year strategy for the continent to pursue the targets that we've set ourselves for the continent.
Let's leave it at that, Dr. Manyewu Mutamba, the acting head of the Agriculture, the African Union Development Agency.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, 26 minutes now to 9 the time. Your story of the week, the next half hour open to you. Obviously, there is so much going on around coalitions, how it's all going to work, what happens next, and all of that. Let's start with Madao on the line from Cape Town. Madao, hi. Coalitions.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm well, Madao. Go for it.
Yes. I want to speak about this coalition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see, we African will never govern the country. I'm a tour guide. I work with people from all over the world.
Yeah.
You see, I meet a lot of people from Africa. They all there's no development. And then we don't want to be with the DA. And then we say we don't need whites. And then they give us education. If you have got money, I take my children to the white school. Why? So I think the Mandela did do a good job last time. He was together with the NP, and then it worked very well. Why now we say we don't want white? Apartheid will never come back. Will never come back, apartheid. Let us work together and then build this country.
Yes, I sort of see what you mean. I mean, development's a tough thing. In Botswana, Rwanda, obviously developing very strongly. But you say basically we need to move away from just saying no when it comes to coalitions. People need to work together?
Yes, not to say this is black, this is white. Yeah, we're not gonna. It's not gonna work like that. Black is black, white is white. That was for a long time ago. It's finished.
Yeah.
We must build a new South Africa.
All right, Madao, thank you. I appreciate the call and the sentiment on the line from Cape Town. Sandra and eThekwini. Sandra, you want to change the subject a little bit. You want to talk about dog breeding.
Yes, I do. Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for a great show. I trust you well. I can hear you all. Do you know the amount of money that there is in dog breeding? Do you know that there are puppy mills going? Even though they are registered breeders, they pay money to their mother body. They pay money to belong to a club. You have people having 20-odd dogs. Some of them have small holdings, some of them don't. And for every litter, say for example, you've got 10 pups in a litter and you sell them at 9,000 Rand per pup. Do you know how much money you make?
That's a ton of
Have you
money.
thought of that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's a lot of money. It's all tax-free. And nobody looks at it, and they fall under forestry and fishery.
Do you know what?
Nobody looks at that.
You know what I've never understood, Sandra? I mean, I've grown up with dogs. I have dogs now, right? One of our dogs recently passed away, which is, very sad for the family. And we look at the other dog and we're like, okay, are we going to get another? When is it time? And we've always had, when I grew up and now, mixed breeds. And, you look around for a dog, sometimes dogs find you, happens. And I don't understand why people pay so much money for a pure breed dog. The dogs that I've had have been very healthy, lived long lives, been very good dogs, guard dogs, good with kids, all the rest. I've never understood why someone pays so much money for a dog. Never get it.
It's money. Because if you buy a dog that you pay a lot of money for, the dog is registered, you can breed with that dog, and you also make your 50,000 Rand.
No, sure. But it's not like you're buying a car where, a more expensive car might be safer or go faster. A dog's a dog, man.
I know, but it's all about money.
No, I think you're right, Sandra.
Nobody looks at it, and there's nobody pays tax. Nobody says a word. Anyway, have a good week.
Thank you, Sandra. Interesting what Sandra says, that people don't pay tax. Maybe there's something there. Very interesting. Temba in Norwood. Back to coalitions. Hi, Temba.
Hello, how are you, Stephen?
I'm well. Go for it.
Yes, I want to talk about this thing now, the new development from the ANC.
Yeah.
I want to state it clearly to my fellow black South Africans. South Africans, is the time now. Our country is gone. And I will say that without fear. Our country is gone. If you look at the numbers of ANC, EFF, and MK, were already above 60. But what Ramaphosa did, he died from coalition with EFF and MK just to accommodate the DA. In very simple reason, because those people they now want their power. They want their power back, and South Africans, hear me out, you'll regret from now on going forward, because our country is gone. Once Cyril institutes that government of national unity, they will vote him out there because they pala hanging over. And then automatically they put Johnson Hazel, everything changed. South Africans, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, and wake up. Wake up, because this is a high time. What is so difficult for ANC to just form a coalition with the AFF and the MK? We move on. The very simple things. because we are above 60%. But this thing was predicted long time. It was a clear plan. That is why your vote were rigged. You are quiet.
Yep.
You are always, everyone
Temba.
split on you. DA bend the flag. You are quiet. Nothing.
Okay,
they did
Temba.
everything they did as they please. You are South African or quiet. But hear me out now. You are going to regret everything. Our country is gone. Our country
All right.
is no more.
Temba. And Timber's line has gone there. I think I mean, look, if you're going to say that the elections are rigged, I'm afraid I must say to you what I said to Umkhonto Wesizwe an hour and a half ago. You need the evidence, but the rest is political sentiment, which is absolutely allowed. Bond in Koberge. Hello, Bond. I wondered if we would hear from you this week. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. I'm worried about Temba. His name in English means hope. It means he has lost hope now.
Yeah.
I'm just
No, I
worried
think,
about it.
look, this is a difficult thing. This is a very difficult thing. And I worry that we have underestimated the emotional impact, the sort of, re-humiliation. I don't know what the right word is, but there's something there.
Yeah, if you can allow me just 3 minutes,
Sure.
I'll talk about coalitions and GNUs. A coalition government, it's when there's no outright majority. The example of that is Finland. Finland got its independence in 1917, but from 1937 up to now, it's been governed by coalition rules by government. And you only simply qualify to be in the government if you win a district. It's so normal that people don't take heed when these elections.
Yeah.
But in 2023, there was a stalemate. Out of 206, the highest was 48, and the others 46 and 43. It took 2 months to put together a coalition government. We only have 14 days. That's the main challenge. It took 2 months for a seasoned country that is a coalition, and it only has got 5 million people. There's no free education in lower schools and university, low levels of inequality and poverty. So we must understand that it's easy for countries that are like monogamous or prosperous to form a coalition than those that are they've got structural differences.
Sure.
The first point in having coalition, you must have an ideological alignment with a party. That's why a DNANC coalition on its own will never work, because like mixing water with oil. I endorse what Mr. Matthew Posa said earlier on. So, but this grand coalition is like the better of all the evils that were proposed. The ANC must be given credit. I'm not giving it mileage now. From 1912, when it was formed, it was answering the Union of South Africa's exclusion of the majority. And then it slumbered. It went on for 8 years until 1994. But the people of South Africa gave it a bonus gift of governing. So we did that for 30 years on its own. In Kenya, when Kenyan National Union was formed 3 years before the independence of Kenya by Jomo Kenyatta, the opposition internally outside was oppressed. It was a one-party state for 38 years until 1991. Also in Zambia, the Zambia's Kenneth Kaunda's UNIP also had the one-party rule, state of emergency from 1964 to 1991. Not so in South Africa. Internal dissent and outside dissent was tolerated for 30 years. And now it had to choose between the rock and this, in applying for endorsing a government of national unity. We must remember what F.W. de Klerk said before he jumped out of the GNU. He said it was like a death sentence being there because he was not being consulted by the ANC in that brief government of national unity. I hope he's not going to do the same. Although it was forced then by the Constitution, by Section 88 of the interim Constitution, it demanded a government of national unity. Here, the voters have spoken by giving ANC 40, DA 20, 14. People must listen to that. We did not vote for that coalition, but now we have been given a fractured mandate. The collective wisdom of South Africans must now prevail. In Finland, it's not the parties that negotiate. They bring people from the civil society to negotiate the best deal. I hope the political class is not going to exclude people that are experts in South Africa to help them in crafting a viable government of national unity. In closing, this is like a slumbering beast, Stephen, that's going to go on until 2029. I hope it's going to last, but it's the best out of the evils present. Thank you.
Bond, thank you. On the line from Quebec, a lot to think about and interesting suggestions, interesting examples around Zambia and Kenya as well. It's good to hear those examples from our continent. I think there's a lot to all of this. I really do. The slumbering beast that'll go on for 5 years, I think maybe Bond's onto something there. You were there, SAFM. It's 9:15. Your story of the week, 086 000 2032. We'll come back to coalitions in just a sec. Bonakela, I see you. Tabo, I see you. Bongani, I see you. But Errol, in Durban, Errol High, you've got something else that happened this week, and I know it matters to you. Good morning.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Errol. Go for it.
Stephen, before I start, I really enjoyed your cricket debate the other day. You know I love my sport.
Yes, no, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, Zizi Kotwa, maybe this sets a precedent for other ministers that were mentioned in the Zondo Commission to be convicted and arrested. I hope so. If I was one of them, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't sleep well at night time.
Yeah.
Let's just hope the NPA have done an about turn and started to step up their convictions. I just hope so.
Yeah, no, Errol, I think a lot of people are hoping that he was charged. He hasn't been convicted yet, but I appreciate the point. No, Errol, thank you. And Errol, I know that you like your sport, so I did wonder if we'll get a call today. Errol, thank you. Tebogo and Kuruman, back to coalitions. Hi, Tebogo.
Hi, Stephen, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How's Kuruman today?
Yeah, it's very cold.
Oh, really?
Cold,
did it snow for you?
No, not snow. It was snowing only on Monday, just a little bit.
Sure. I don't think I've ever heard of the phrase snow and Kuruman in the same sentence before.
Yeah, it was just to give us a taste on how it will feel.
All right. Coalitions you want to talk about. Go for it.
Yes, Stephen. I've been a member of the ANC for the last 35 years.
Yes.
I've been a supporter of Kaizer Chiefs for all my life. Both of them are confused. And both of them are crying out for help.
Yeah.
Chiefs is crying out for help.
Mm-hmm.
ANC doesn't know what to do. They are crying out for help.
Yeah.
Yes. So the decision to go for a government of coalition is a cry for help. What they are saying actually is that we are tired of governing. Please come and help us. That's all I want to say.
So who's the Mamelodi Sundowns here? Is it MK? Is it the DA? Is it EFF? Is it someone else?
No, I think the best broad coalition will be, although it will be for many people, it will not be the right thing. It will be DA, EFF, MK.
Sure.
You have to bring them together in a room. And if you can, I'm sorry to say that, beat the hell out of them until they agree.
Yeah.
For the interest of the country.
All right.
This egos must stop.
All right, Tebogo and Kuruman, thank you. Okay, interesting. Yeah, interesting to sort of see it. Let's go to Tabo in Tshwane. No, we've just lost Tabo in Tshwane. You were there, SAFM. It's 11 minutes now to 9 the time. More calls on coalitions, the government of national unity. Also, of course, Umkhonto weSizwe's comments this morning, and Trevor Manuel's.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
We're still very slow on the M1 South in Pretoria. Crash at the N4 Emelathleni Highway. Traffic is still parking back through Stormville and back towards Montana. If you're just about to come through Pumalani Plaza or join from the Montana Sefako Makato on-ramp, might want to think about an alternative route to bypass that. Heavy pressure on the N3 North Marlborough Drive up to Buccleuch interchange and Durban side this morning. Things easing up quite nicely. After a busy run through Spaghetti Junction, the volumes have dropped off and the traffic has just become free-flowing. Don't forget Durban to Pietermaritzburg, Comrades Sunday, so plenty of closures early in the morning Durban side, later in the afternoon on the Pietermaritzburg side as it is the up run. Driving up into Cape Town, Stella and Bosch on the R44, crash at Jamestown. That's quite a heavy backlog if you're arriving in from the Somerset West area. And just north of Craddock on the N10 route in the Eastern Cape, quite a big crash scene. You might find yourself just queuing there both directions. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
The Brave Warriors and the Carthage Eagles are delighted with registering wins in their first two Group H matches. They meet on South African soil in search of victory. They are battling it out in the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers. Southern Africa takes on North Africa. Catch the beauty of African football. Namibia versus Tunisia. This Sunday, 9 June at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
9 minutes to 9. Kathy, of course, coming next for you, and more conversations, I suspect, around coalitions. I think it's going to be unavoidable. I don't know. 086 000 2032. Your story of the week. Bonakele in Khayelitsha. Nice to hear from Khayelitsha this morning. Bonakele, hi, good morning.
Absolutely, that's where I stay, my friend. Good morning, Stephen. That's where I stay in Khayelitsha, yes. Look, I'm one of those who are disappointed with this government of national unity. I don't think it's going to work. And in fact, I must say, I'm happy for this MK party not to have decided yes. I hope and pray they don't join this, so that they stay on the opposition benches. So, because one thing that I hate about them, are they still saying that the president of this country must step aside in order to join this government of national unity?
Well, they weren't clear on that when I asked them this morning.
Exactly, that is what I'm saying. That's my point, of course. If they're going to come up with these new rules and with these demands, and the ANC agrees on that, it means for us who voted the ANC, we must understand, under the leadership of my mistake, of President Ramaphosa, it will mean, if they agrees on that, ANC step aside President Jones to accommodate this MK party, then ANC is weak.
Yeah.
Understand?
Yeah.
And in fact, even this EFF of Malema, even with them, I mean this. I hope I wanted DA, ANC, Patriotic Alliance, and that one IFP. That was gonna be okay for me. And then those two, EFF and the MK Party and others, can be on the opposition side, so that we go ahead. What do you think will happen? I don't understand this fear of people. Apartheid's going to come back. There's no such thing.
Yeah,
there's absolutely no such thing. So I'm just disappointed, but I'm praying so that they don't agree on this, so that the ANC can go with the DA, the Patriotic Alliance, and the IFP. That's it. End of story.
All right, Bonakele, interesting. Thank you. Yeah, no, like strong views, lots of thoughtful views coming through this morning, I think. Bongani and Mpumalanga, you want to talk about the BRICS nations. Are you asking, is this election going to impact that?
Yes, good morning, SG. Yes, I don't know what's going to happen, because that was, I don't know if it was a government policy or it was an ANC manifesto, foreign policy that guided them to join the BRICS nation. So if the ANC is not in government, so now the BRICS nation, what's going to happen to them?
I think that they would be, I would need to check, Bongani. I know, so with Argentina it was slightly different. Their government took a decision to join BRICS. They then had an election, and before they joined BRICS, the new president said he didn't want to join BRICS, so I don't know what happened with that. But I think in our case, we would normally sign treaties, and Parliament would then there'll be quite a long process to sort of go through Parliament to pull out of it, I think, is what would happen. But I mean, I don't think the result of this election will change our foreign policy, really.
Oh, okay. Yeah, another thing about the guy Temba. I don't know what is ANC is doing wrong, because the ANCs only have 40%.
Yeah.
So now, if the ANC they decided to sit in the benches, so now the other people, the other DA, MK, EFF, Patriotic Alliance, all those small parties and all those small parties, they can form with the government without the ANC.
They could, yes. I can't see it, but they could, yeah.
Yeah, they could, but the blame is not going to. They should not the blame based to the ANC, that the ANC must do what the other people want. They must go with the EFF or whatever, because the ANCs only have 40%. Then there's a 60% that can constitute the government. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, it's all about the election results. I mean, this is what happens if you fall below 50%, isn't it?
Exactly. Thank you.
Thanks, Bongani. On the line from Mpumalanga, appreciate it. Kabiti in Germiston. Kabiti, have I pronounced your name correctly? Good morning.
Kibiti. Good morning, Steve.
Kabiti, thank you. I'm well. Go for it.
Yeah, Steve, I just want to talk about this government of national unity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from my point of view, the ANC doesn't have the right to can say South Africa must have a government of national unity.
Yeah.
Why I'm saying this? We don't need a government of national unity at present, because the country is stable. We don't have an unstable government or an unstable country. In 1994, it failed. And then what makes the ANC to think that the government of national unity will work now? If I may ask.
Why do you say it failed in 1994? What makes you say that?
National Party pulled out.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so because of the... Okay, all right. No, fair enough. All right, I just wanted to understand why you say that. So you're saying it wouldn't work now?
It wouldn't work. The current situation in the country now demands or needs a coalition government. And if they see fit that we cannot have a coalition government, let's have a rerun of the elections. If all of the role players, all the role players, not only the ANC, if all the role players see that we cannot have a coalition government, let's rerun the elections. And then I believe that when we have a rerun, a majority will come out.
Why would people change their minds? They voted just 10 days ago, not even. They voted, 9 days ago. Why would they change their minds if they voted again next week? I don't think they would.
Remember, 29 million registered to vote, and only around 14, 16 million.
No, fair enough. If you could prove you didn't vote, should you be given another chance? I don't think that would work. Yeah.
I did vote.
No, so did I. Yeah.
Right. I think those who are sitting at home, they regret not having voted, decided. Because if we had their vote,
it could be different.
We would have not been in this situation, you know.
All right, Kabiti in Germiston, I hear you. Thank you. I'm going to move on. I'm sorry. Tuelo in Kimberley, you're our last caller this morning. Tuelo, hi.
Yes, I'll just be brief. I want to concur with Hope, the guy Temba.
Yeah.
It seems like most of the comrades, the callers did not understand it. I disagree on the part of him saying it is rigged, because he alleges must prove. But on the part of we need allegiance, or we need to co-govern with black parties.
Yeah.
I concur with him. We need EFF, IFP, and MK. We don't need this. If we can just get our ducks in a row and check our numbers there, we are above. You see, let's view things broader. You see, yes, we don't need DA, because DA might smuggle in DNA, we don't want it.
Okay, may I ask a question about the definition of black? Is Action SA a black party?
Action SA, it's a colorful party. Colorful.
Okay, so it's not a black party; it's colorful.
Yes,
okay, all right. 12.
When you check the MK, you can see it's down. It's mixed. There's Indians there. There are blacks there. You see. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Because we can also see. The Temba said we need to wake up. You can see that that's Mangal Mood story. They want to slot in so that at least the DA must appear somewhere. Maybe as deputy president, or because we have clearly how the guy of the IEC just made mention now. He said that they will count There will be a secret ballot if needs be. There will be voting also there in Parliament. We don't want surprises moving forward.
All right,
Thank you very much.
A deputy president is appointed by the president, but I hear your point, Tuelo. All right, thank you. So Parliament only votes for the president and the speakers. Well, I did know this was going to be a very busy week, and so it's been. And I did know it was going to be a busy day, and so it's been. And I do expect it to be quite busy going forward, and we'll be back with you through what I think will be a busy next week. From Mdu, Stanza, Zelma, Melissa, myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Leading the coalition conversation, dare I say. Kathy is next. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. Our insurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand, SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Ramaphosa to visit Nelson Mandela Bay following devastating floods, and political analyst weighs in on recent killing of MK members. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa will today visit the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro Municipality in the Eastern Cape, where heavy downpour has caused floods. Over 3,000 people in the Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City metros have been displaced. 10 people, including an 8-year-old girl, died in Kariga and Nelson Mandela Bay, while 3 people died in the Buffalo City metro following the floods. The government has deployed officials from the National Disaster Management Centre to the affected areas. Meanwhile, the Nelson Mandela Metro Municipality has been declared a disaster zone, with damage estimated at 1 billion rand. The rand has continued to hover in negative terrain as traders remain on edge until there's some clarity over the future of the country's administration. The local currency is expected to be fairly volatile and headline-driven in the short term. The greenback is steady but is still expected to lose around 0.5% this week. This as evidence of a deteriorating U.S. labor market strengthens chances of a Federal Reserve interest rate decrease this year. It's currently trading at 18.95 Rand to the US dollar. Political analyst Musa Xulu says he does not believe that Umkhonto weSizwe party members are being targeted. MK party member Mxolisi Zungu was gunned down in Katumana, KwaZulu-Natal on Wednesday. His death follows the deaths of 2 other MK party members in Katlehong and Ekurhuleni in Gauteng last week. Xulu says this appears to be pure criminality.
Well, the MK party has been positioning itself as a victim of all sorts of things. Their stance is that they would like to be seen as a threat to possibly ANC people who would then go out and try to kill them. My own research on the ground has shown that the killing of Mr. Zungu had nothing to do with political affiliation at all.
The Gauteng Education Department says it's providing support to those affected by the gunning down of 2 siblings inside their home in Shoshanguve north of Pretoria. The deceased, aged 4